Are we streaming? Are we streaming? We're streaming away. Are we streaming? Are we streaming? Are we streaming today? Let's start the stream. Let's have some fun if we can. We're streaming. I'm streaming today. Hey guys, I have depression. Today is a depression day. So just get ready for the fact that I have depression. It's tough doing like a day by day sort of thing, and I mean, I guess I'm lucky because it's, when I'm doing this and I'm doing it for myself and I'm doing it for the people who tune in and for the people who want to participate, like, I find that everybody's nice and forgiving and there's lots of, and so I can be in this kind of energy, in this state, and people are kind of nice about it, I find. But, like, having depression and dealing with capitalism, like, where you have to be like this all the time. Oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, ha, 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 ha. Like, it's just like nightmare fuel. And it just, like, it just, like, piles up and piles up. Anyway, I thought that this was a good meme to sort of start the stream with, because people are starting to put it together, right? Hey Zero, how you doing? How you doing? I have depression. Today's a depression day for sure, but I hope it doesn't affect the quality of the information and the quality of the stream. I hope that I can still enlighten and soothe our collective anxiety and our collective angst. And today we're starting with corporations will buy up Canada's real estate and rent it back to us. Then we can go back to work at corporations and make money to give the corporations back in rent. Please tell me how this isn't serfdom. It is serfdom. Like, we are in, like, we're not going into, like, we are in a neo-feudal configuration. The neo-feudal configuration essentially is that small groups of oligarchs, through their corporate shell companies, own everything, own all the commodities that are necessary for life. They own the housing, they own the food distribution network, and we work for them in order to get access to the shelter and the food that they hoard and withhold from us. It is neo-feudalism. We've been doing it for a little while, but now it's just becoming really obvious and, like, getting far, far, far worse. And we're not, and our political system isn't even going to admit that this is the case for another decade. Like, I see, like, bills getting pushed through Toronto City Council that are starting to acknowledge it, but they won't go through because the politicians who have been bought by these corporations are still in power, and we are way too illiterate and gullible to recognize what's actually happening. And there's still, like, huge segments of the population who still think we're in some kind of capitalist configuration, like retired boomers, right? People who are literally like, just go shake his hand, right? Like the sort of high-level stupidity and illiteracy that exists in our society. So the neo-feudal configuration is here, it's in place, and our job at this point as workers, like, if you want to participate, it is trying to find which one of the oligarchs you want to work for, and that's called freedom. That you have the freedom to pick which feudal king you would like to sell yourself to, and and the outcomes of this are just going to get worse and worse and worse, right? Like, things are going to get very obvious and very clear that, like, we are in this enormous decline as a society and as a people. Hey Lonnie, how you doing today? Glad you're here. Good to see you. Good to see you. I'm gonna warn you up front, Lonnie. Today's a depression day. So, I'm trying not to be as dour as I feel, but I think if I had to be real. Dear America, if you're a democratic republic, why isn't it in your name? Curious. Turning Point DPRK, that's pretty funny. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Lonnie. I am sorry to hear that. Well, we'll wallow together. What do you think? How about you and I? We just grab hands and weep into the world. China is a sleeping giant. Let her sleep. For when she wakes, she will move the world. Napoleon. Napoleon's an interesting figure in history, man. What a character. Yeah, I just did a video about this. The Israeli government, this guy here, Naftali Bennett, he's further to the right than Netanyahu. I did a bit of research on him. He's his positions put him further to the right than Netanyahu. He is strictly, he's an Islamophobe, a homophobe, transphobe, any phobe you like, right? Like, if you're not a straight Israeli male or female, then you're not really a person, according to this guy. And all of his economic policies are just straight up neoliberal fascism, right? Like, it might actually be worse for the Palestinians. Like, this situation with him in charge might actually make things worse, if that's possible. So the story is that Hamas floats some balloons that have like helium and hydrogen in them into Israeli territory, and the balloons land and of course start fires. And like, the pictures of the fires are literally like, it's like a fire the size of this room in a field, right? And so in exchange for that, they fly jet fighters over Gaza and bomb infrastructure, the way they do. Nobody dies, so there's that, I guess. But it is a breaking of the ceasefire. And it's not even accurate to call it like a war or any a ceasefire. What are you talking about? Like, it's a resistance movement at this point. Like, it's not a conflict. It's not a war. It's a resistance. Oh yeah, financial crisis coming. What are you talking about coming? Like, the financial crisis is right in front of our faces. It's here already, and the wealthy, the oligarch class knows that the economy, like, there's this riff going on that, oh well, once the pandemic ends, we'll all open up the economy and everything will, start humming again and it'll be like gangbusters. Nobody has any money. Like, you can't build an economy on this. Like, and the wealthy and the oligarch class know it. How do we know they know it? Because they're betting against the entire market. Citadel is literally betting against the entire market. It's shorting the whole market. It's anticipating a market crash, right? And of course there's going to be a market crash. Nobody has any money, right? Nobody can buy anything. This is classic Marxism, right? This is like classic 101 Marxism. That capitalism will eventually suppress wages so badly and will eventually cause so many problems for workers that they won't be able to buy the products that they're making, and the system will collapse, right? And it's happening. It's happening. And like, you could make the argument that it's already happened. Like, we are falling into a state of neo-feudalism, and it's and the people not going to work, like the labor shortage, quote unquote, that exists, is being reported as if it's like, oh, people have too many benefits and it's too lazy. But like, no, it's a quiet revolution. Like, people are just not willing to participate in this shit anymore. Like, go find literally any comment section anywhere, right, that's talking about this, and you're gonna find a whole bunch of people being like, fuck these guys. Like, we're done. Like, it's over. Like, I'm not gonna go work flipping burgers for a sociopath so that I can get a wage that doesn't even pay my rent. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And like, and of course it's not going to be reported as what it is, which is a revolutionary act, right? Staying home and not working for these sociopaths is a revolutionary act. just like refuse. And this idea that there's like these conservative types who are like, no, you gotta go get, that's how you get a work ethic, right? You go get a job at a McDonald's and you work up from there, right? Fuck all that. Fuck all that. Those people are nightmare sociopaths. They need to shut the fuck up. Because like, you're not learning a work ethic working at a place like McDonald's. You're not learning a work ethic. You're learning how to be obedient. That's what you're learning, right? You're learning how to be obedient, and that's what the system rewards. The system rewards people who say yes, sir. That's what the system rewards. And if you're a person that stands up and goes, I think there might be a problem here, they take the ruler and they smack your knuckles, right? And so no, stay home, right? That's what I'm going to do for tomorrow's video. It's like the stay home revolution. Because like, this system is not functioning. It doesn't work, and it's going to get more and more obvious that that's the case. Like, I have doctor, lawyer, engineer friends who are like literally saying to me, like, I've worked my entire life, I paid off my student loans, I did everything correct, right? And they did. They did everything correct by the rules that they were told how to do. Get the good grades, get the good degree, go to the right schools, get hired in the right institutions, work for the right people, and these guys are turning around and looking at me and being like, and I can't buy a house. What was the point of all that? Right? These guys are turning 40 and they're just like, my whole life has been a complete fucking lie. Right? And they're right. It has been a complete fucking lie. Right? That they can't, their life is just going to turn into like renting. What the fuck are you talking about? You're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're an engineer, right? What the fuck are you talking about renting? Like, that's fucking bullshit. And here they are. And it's and what the system is doing, and why the system ultimately collapses in on itself, is it's radicalizing the educated professionals, right? The people who are traditionally liberal or conservative, right, are now starting to be like, but we're being abandoned. We're being abandoned. That the whole riff of my whole life was do these things and you'll be able to get a house, you'll be able to build wealth, right? You'll be able to build some kind of future for yourself and your children. It's fucking bullshit. And it's obvious to these guys, right? First of all, it's bad enough that they had to pay back their fucking student loans. Like, that's fucking embarrassing enough. And so there's like a wealth sink that's just siphoned wealth away from them. But now, like, you're telling me that, like, a lawyer at the top of the field who's working for, like, the most prestigious institutions here in the country cannot get a house. It's failure. It's a failed system. It's a complete and total failure. And you're not going to fix it with liberalism. You're not going to fix it with just piecemeal reform. That's not going to happen. That's just fucking not going to happen. Biden said my foreign minister before correcting himself with Secretary of State. That's fine. These minor gaffes, right? I mean, Biden definitely has dementia, so if this is like what you're trying to ping him on, like, come on. And he's probably been saying foreign minister all day, right? Like, everybody calls their Secretary of State foreign minister, right? Do you think it will require a revolution to change? Canada has a long history of actually resolving these sorts of things through the electoral processes, and there's a timeline where it works, right? There is. I see it. It's the same timeline that got us our healthcare system. It's the same timeline that got us, that we legislated away slavery, right? Like chattel slavery. We not wage slavery, obviously. We're in a wage slave system, but chattel slavery, we like, America fought a war over it. Like, what do you call that but a revolutionary war, right? Like, it was, well, a civil war, I suppose, because, anyway. So while America is fighting like a civil war in order to see whether or not chattel slavery gets abolished or not, we just like quietly pass through legislation to abolish it, right? Same story with the healthcare system. Like, we legislated it. So there is, yeah, and the thing that concerns me about Canada is its proximity and alignment with the USA. That also concerns Canada. Like, Canada is very concerned with that. If I was the leader of Canada, I would always be very concerned with that. And Like Stephen Harper was very upfront about that very issue. Like one of the legacies of the Harper administration was how he worked to decouple Canada's fate from that of the United States. That when he got into office, there were like Canada only had one trade agreement, and it was NAFTA, right? And then when he left office, Canada had 50. So Stephen Harper did a really good did really good by Canada to get us off of trying to wean us off of our reliance on the United States, because it's like he saw it coming. He was straight up. He was just like, yeah, the United States is in decline. It's really, really clear. So we need to do what we have to do in order to reconfigure our society to stop being so reliant on them. And Trudeau since has not really done anything to increase that, right? To work on that, because Trudeau doesn't really have ideas or thoughts, right? Like he's just reading. He's just a haircut reading cue cards. Don't you wish you had a president as cool as Biden? No. Like Biden's such a fucking goober. Like Biden's just such a fucking goober. But will it require a revolution in Canada? If we all just stop voting Conservative and Liberal, no, right? Like we could just stop voting Liberal, stop voting Conservative, start voting in high numbers for literally anybody else, a paper bag, right? And generally that scares the ruling class into recognizing that, oh, we have to actually do something. We can't literally do the nothing that we do. We have to actually do stuff. And that's how it's happened historically here in Canada, right? Because the ruling class, the Conservatives and the Liberals, do understand that if a party like the NDP get in, that could be the end of capitalism, right? And it's that classic sort of FDR thing. Like you have to start conceding power to the working class. You have to start conceding power to the populace, or else the game can end, right? That the capitalist game can end. And it can end legislatively. Like if the NDP are the ones who get into power, right? Suddenly that's going, like, take a look at what happens when the Conservatives get in, right? When Conservatives get in, suddenly you're living in like the most racist society because it's emboldened all your racists. All the racists and fascists and psychos who live on the right wing of the society are suddenly like, oh, our leader got in, sweet. Yeah, there's a lot of us. We're the greatest. Yeah, Canada. Yeah, fuck all these other races and ethnicities, right? And you can see that. That's observable, right? Like that's very obvious that happens. And that can happen on the other side as well, right? If the NDP get in, it emboldens communists. It emboldens people on the left wing who are like, maybe everybody should have food and shelter. What's with this money? Why are we bothering with this? Who cares, right? And the power structure is aware of this. So if the NDP actually did seize federal power, it's going to make the job of the neoliberal fascists way, way harder, because it's going to embolden socialists, it's going to embolden communists, and this is how you end up with like a socialist party. This is how you end up with a communist party who are actually running and actually doing stuff, because suddenly these people who have been either unengaged or unable to actually organize suddenly see like, oh, Canada actually does want to move to the left. Canada actually is interested in going that direction. And so now, instead of it feeling like we're organizing in a vacuum and screaming into a nothing space, there's this idea that no, we can keep pushing to the left. We can keep pushing to the left. And to combat that, Conservatives and Liberals will start to concede. They'll start to concede. Well, Conservatives will never do that because they're psychopaths, but Liberals do. Liberals start to concede things, right? Like that's how we got our healthcare system, right? That the NDP was threatening from the left, and the Trudeau government, the Trudeau senior government, realized that if they kept withholding healthcare and kept allowing it to be done through this insurance-based system, which is just a method of control from the capitalist class, right? just a way to keep people in line through fear of losing their health care. And they realized that if they kept this up, they could lose power, that the NDP could seize power. And if that happens, that's a disaster for capital. Because while the NDP, in my view, is kind of just orange liberal, the heart of their power is in the unions, right? And so essentially what you are saying is that the capitalist power structure is no longer the one that's in power, it's the unions, they're class enemies. And the trajectory of that is a net negative for the capitalist class. And it's not a far throw from there to start asking, wait, why do we need these capitalists at all? They're pointless. They're obviously parasites. Why do we need them at all? And once you start talking that way in the halls of power, yeah, so they'll start to concede things. And the liberal, and that's like, I mean, take a look at the basic income, right? Like, the liberals are actually trying to push through legislation to convince the gullible that they're actually interested in doing it. So this next election is actually going to be really, really, really crucial, right? Hey, Robin, how you doing? Thanks for popping in. This next election is going to be really, really crucial, because if the liberals walk away with a majority, that's a disaster for the populace, because you're just going to get 4 years of essentially neo-fascist rule. Just like they're going to cut all of these support services. They're suddenly going to say that, oh, no, they're not going to say that the basic income's not doable. What they're going to do is they're going to put in the most tepid pilot project that they possibly can up in Nineveh or something, right? Like, where they're like, yeah, we gave money to 500 people, right? So shut up about it. And that's what'll happen if we get a liberal majority. If we end up, I suspect we end up with a liberal minority, because ultimately the Trudeau government is worthless, right? Like, you have to run like, you'd have to run the most brain dead campaign ever to see the liberals actually gain power, right? Like, so I suspect we get a liberal minority, and if that's the case, we might actually get something reasonable from them, because like this idea that the liberals are actually going to do anything of benefit for the workers, like it's a total fucking joke. Hey Ruth, how you doing? Yeah, so there is still hope for Canada, right? Like, everything I'm describing here is like historically Canadian. Like, it has happened this way in the past. It does work this way. It does move in that direction. The United States, on the other hand, full-scale civil war. I don't see it happening any other way. And it's going to be very obvious after this midterm election that that's a full-scale civil war is going to not only be is actually going to be necessary. Hey Vince, how you doing? Well, I'm depressed out of my mind, Vince. How are you? Glad you're here, though. Glad you're here. Yeah, I just don't see a path for... Yeah, America has made its choice. Probably happened long ago. Yep. And what's going to happen I shouldn't say going to, but like, what's the most likely thing to happen is that the midterm election will happen. The Democrats will get more power, because people are furious at these Republicans. People are furious with them. And yeah, I hope so too, Vince. I hope so too. Like, people are furious with the Republicans, simply based on the fact that there has not been an investigation on January 6th. You have even, like, right-wing people, not center-right, like right-wing people being like, no, I'm going to vote Democrat because I want this to happen, right? And the Democrats are going to get enough power to basically push through anything they want, and then they're going to do fuck all. Right? They're just going to get, suddenly, instead of it being just Joe Manchin who's the obstructionist, right? Suddenly there'll be like 5 or 6 obstructionists in the Democratic Party, and people will be like, well, what the hell? And suddenly it'll get really obvious that this is their strategy, right? That the Democratic strategy for why they can't push things through and can't get stuff done is to create an obstructionist in their ranks, Joe Manchin, right? There's a reason why they're not like actively trying to get rid of this guy or actively trying to do anything to hurt him. It's because he's on their side. He's doing what they want. He's the obstructionist, and he's the person that they he's the person see, I have to disagree with you, Onward, because I think that people are looking at it and being like, they know that if the Republicans win the Senate, that it's just going to be more obstructionism and nothing's going to happen. They know that that's the truth. And so I do think there's going to be this big push from even the center, right? Even the center. Like, Americans want things to happen. They want things to occur. And this obstructionism that they're looking at, they're getting exhausted with it. And I just, like, I mean, perhaps they'll lose the Senate, but that is only going to continue flowing in the direction of civil war, right? Like, it's just getting, yeah, Manchin and Sinema are just sheepgoats for the Dems. He really represents the ideology of the party. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, it's performed helplessness. That's a great way to put it, because it is just theater, right? It's just theatrics at this point, and I mean, and I think this all flows into what's happening with the worker shortage and what I was saying earlier, right? That people are not going to go work these jobs because it's a revolutionary act, right? That they are basically saying we refuse to participate in this system anymore, right? And if everybody in North America did this, if everybody just stayed home, that would be the end of it. Like, capitalism would cease to function. It would stop. And suddenly the political class would be, like, beholden to people who are actually saying, can we restructure this so that we are not rewarding sociopaths who are actively attempting to destroy us? And people know, like, if they're not articulating it, they know it gets worse. Like, they know it gets worse. Like, just take a look at, like, these corporations buying up all our housing, right? It's just getting worse. Like, and it's going to get much, much worse. And it's, like, to the point where it's going to get really, really obvious. Like, you can still kind of pretend and live in this delusional space if you're, like, a retired boomer who lives out in the country somewhere and you don't even bother, like, reading the news. If you do read the news, it's probably just, like, the National Post. Right? Like, if you're that type of person, you can pretend as though this is all just individuals and they're having their own individual problems. But to me, that's not much different than the captain of a ship standing on the bow of the ship screaming for the ship to go faster while the bottom of the ship is literally in the water and the sails are in tatters, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs, "You lazy lot, we need to keep going forward." And he's, like, looking forward. He has no idea what's happening behind him, nor does he care to look. So, like, and the only way things are going to improve in Canada is if we just abandon the Liberals and abandon the Conservatives, because we can't wait for the Boomers to die. Like, we can't. If we just wait for the Boomers to die. So no vote of confidence now? I don't know what that's in reference to, Vince. The Boomers just really need to hurry up and redact it by algorithm. So every time you do that, Robin, it makes me chuckle. That's really nice. So the rest of us can make some small amount of progress. Oh yeah, there's links here. Hold on. Try now. See if that works. Sorry, I had it in that other thing, so links don't show up. People have been saying it doesn't show up in this one either. If you want me to search something, bud, I'll just search it. Putin, through his interpreter, goes dark. There's no happiness in life. There's only a mirage on the horizon. So cherish that. Wow. Wow. Oh yeah, and why Canadian politics does such a bad job at reflecting class values? Because the politicians have been bought. Hey Kiri, how you doing? Glad you popped in. Thanks for being here. Good time to say everybody like, share, subscribe. Oh yeah, Green leader Anime Paul blasts racist, sexist party execs who sought ouster. I think that's such that really does make me lose respect for Anime Paul. Like, I feel like it's that classic liberal grift to just be like, oh, this is because of racism and sexism, and I'm like, or it's because, you know, you lost a third of your caucus, right? Or it's because, like, you had 3 Green Party seats and now you only have 2, and people and you have like a very strong new socialist movement coming up in your own party that is hungry to take over, right? Like Annemie Paul, she wants. I've spoken with Annemie Paul. Like she's one of the people one of the federal leaders I've actually talked to face, and I do think that her intentions are good overall. I just also think that she's essentially a liberal, right? And like these statements where she's saying that it's racist and sexist. It's like that's not good, dude. Like that's not good. That's not a good position to take. Like it doesn't work. And all it's going to do is embolden the socialists in her ranks, because it's a sign that says that she can't actually have a debate with them. She can't actually speak with them. So I do think that someone like Dimitri, it's inevitable that the socialists take over the Green Party, because that's where the push is really happening. Dimitri would have blasted the Greens to 3rd place, taking the left-wing vote from the NDP. Instead, we get a neoliberal, eco-capitalist right-wing party under Annemie Paul. I mean, I think that's giving Dimitri a lot of credit. I don't think that would have happened. Like, I don't think he would have propelled the party up to 3rd place. But I think it would have made the NDP is going left. Like, the NDP is very obviously going left. They've been doing very obvious things and moving very obviously to the left. And if the Green Party had have gone straight socialist and had have been like, we are now a socialist party, and had have been upfront about that, it would have accelerated that process, right? And like, Canada is going to move to the left, right? Most of us are leftists in the first place. Like, most people are left-wing in the first place, right? It's just we're so fractured on the left. And we're gullible as well. Like, we're really easy. Like, it's easy to convince us that the liberals actually give a shit about us, right? Like, the case in point, Trudeau, right? But we are getting to a point now where, like, people are getting fed up. The climate change conversation is getting to be hysterical and desperate, because it's really clear that our leadership is completely disinterested in actually doing anything about it. It's getting clearer and clearer that like the income inequality issue is getting worse. For God's sakes, there's people living in that are called tent cities. Like, it's going to get worse, and it's going to get obvious, and it's going to get clearer that the only path forward is to abandon the conservatives and the liberals, right? We should do that. We should do that en masse. So, and I mean, so long as the Green Party stays as essentially like green liberals, like they don't really have any, like all of their policies have been co-opted by the liberals, right? They don't actually have any ideas. They don't actually have any thoughts. Like, so why do they exist? And like them losing their East Coast Green Party person, I mean, that person probably said the same thing. Like, what's the point of this party anymore, right? Like, the liberals have at least co-opted what the Green Party believes in rhetoric, right? So why does the Green Party exist? And in my perspective, the only reason for the Green Party to exist any longer is to actually become socialist, is to actually start saying things like, these capitalists are worthless and we should get rid of them. Not only are they worthless, they are the cause of our problems, right? And they are, right? Neoliberal capitalism is the cause of our problems, and we should get rid of them. And if the Green Party were to suddenly start talking that way, yeah, then they would have a point. I'm very concerned that the Green Party is just going to get wiped out in this next election, right? They only have 2 seats, right? Like, and it would be a damn shame. It would be a damn shame, because we need a socialist party that's actually pushing on the left, and that could be the Greens. Oh, did I? Yeah. Why Canadian politics does such a bad job of reflecting working class values? Because they don't give a fuck about the working class. Like, period. Why would a politician who's being paid by billionaires give a fuck about workers? Canadians professor's critical mining report tanked by Dominican Republic? That's a really weird headline. Canada prof's critical mining report tanked by Dominican Republic. Okay. This Canada Day, the best way to celebrate is to cancel it. I actually really like this. I like that First Nations people and leftist organizations are starting to go after Canada Day. And like, Because, like, I don't know, is there a reason to be proud of Canada right now? Is there a reason? Should we stand up and wave a little flag and be like, yeah, Canada, this is the best place ever? While we, like, exhume corpses, while we abandon the poor, while we abandon the working class generally. Forget about the poor. Like, there are people who are working jobs living in tents. Like, it's like, I just can't help but look at Canada and just be kind of cringily embarrassed by it. Like, we should be so much better than this. But, like, we're just not. And as much as, like, I can point to the sociopathic capitalist class that's taken our society over and bribed our politicians, like, we keep voting for them. So, like, who's actually at fault here? Like, who like, if you know that there's a sociopath in your ranks and you keep voting for them to be in charge, is it the sociopath's fault or is it your fault? Right? Like, so let's take that, like, far right personal responsibility riff and actually put it on our politics and our political system. And it's like, oh, so let's take personal responsibility. We are acting like a bunch of gullible children. We keep looking at people like Justin Trudeau and be like, he'll save us, because we're fucking stupid. Yeah, but we're not the USA, LOL. Yeah. Is your constitution more pro-populace than ours? The Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is what we're really talking about here, is actually very similar to the United States Constitution, right? Like that, we don't guarantee, like, food and shelter, like, we don't guarantee those sorts of things. And to me, I actually think the major difference in how the political system is structured is that we actually have a functioning court system. That, to me, is the major difference between the United States and Canada. Because, like, in terms of our electoral politics, it's very, very maple washing. That's very funny, dude. So, like, in terms of our electoral politics, like, it's obvious that we can have more than more than two parties, right? Like, so there's a structural difference that, and then, of course, there's, like, we can have minority governments, which is much different than what happens in the United States, but I agree with my brother, who I think is going to become the premier of Manitoba if he believes in himself. He says, and I completely agree with him, it doesn't actually matter what your electoral system looks like in terms of its structure, right? That doesn't matter. And in many ways, it's actually a red herring, right? To direct a lot of energy towards, oh yeah, let's reform the electoral system, and then when it fails or it doesn't work or it doesn't do a thing, it disenfranchises and delusions a lot of people. And what do? They stay home and they don't vote, right? Because if you can convince people that the problem is the structure of the system, and the system doesn't get restructured, then they'll just throw up their hands and be like, oh, well, then it doesn't work and we're not going to vote, which works for the power structure. Like, they don't want people to vote. Or if they do want them to vote, it's vote for us, right, obviously. But the position that my brother takes, and I agree with completely, is it doesn't matter how the system is structured. What matters is engagement with the system, right? That if they have 100 people and you have 1,000 people, you win. Right? That politics is fundamentally a numbers game. It doesn't matter how it's structured. If they have 100 people and you have 1,000 people, you win. And the structure of it is completely irrelevant. And so that's why we need to, as leftists, keep pushing for engagement. Right? Keep pushing for engagement. And I don't mean just, like, go vote in a ballot box. I mean, like, show up to protests. Show up to these organizing structures. Show up to these places, have the debates, have the negotiations, push to the left, and not just at the ballot box, but, like, go to the NDP conventions, go to these organizations, get involved with, like, Socialist Action, right, which is a non-affiliated political organization that votes in voter blocks, right? This is how you actually do things. Engagement is what matters, and so in terms of, like, the electoral system between the American system and the Canadian system, they're not different enough to be meaningfully different, to be meaningful. What is different enough is our court system, right? That in America, to become a judge, you literally win an election, right? That judges are elected, which means that like some dude who has no education, who's never read a law book in his life, who has no idea about the history of the legal system or any of this kind of thing, maybe doesn't even know anything about the Constitution, can just run a successful campaign because he has $100 million, right? And then he becomes a judge, right? And so what does that end up being? It just ends up being a business position, more or less, right? So you're winning an election. Yeah, judges are thugs for sure. So here in Canada, if you want to become a judge, and I don't mean like a high level like Supreme Court judge or something. I'm talking about like a judge at all. You have to have you have to first of all be a lawyer, right? So you have to be a lawyer. You have to have been in the university system working as a professor for a certain amount of years. You have to apply and then also answer a question, which is how would you reform the legal system to improve it, which has to be passed by other judges who agree. So you have to be extremely vetted, which means that to become a judge here in Canada, you know your shit. Like, you know your fucking shit. Down in the States, also on top of this, like, so the system in America is adversarial, right? That you're trying to be a winner, right? That this side is trying to defeat this side, and this side is trying to defeat this side, and that there's going to be a winner, right? Whereas the legal system in Canada, like, there is that adversarial quality, certainly, but it comes to a point, and because all of the lawyers and the judge all work on behalf of the crown, right? They work on behalf of the system itself, so they're not actually adversaries, right? Everybody gets paid, whether there's a win or a loss, right? Everybody's getting a paycheck, because they don't work for the client, they work for the crown. And so what this means is that you do have situations where the two sides come together, and this guy has created an argument that is technically, like, you could see a technical correct kind of thing, but then the judge looks at it and is like, yeah, but you're setting a weird precedent here, and it just doesn't kind of work out, so I don't think I'm going to move forward with that. And, like, this guy is just like, oh, okay, instead of being like, no, my whole paycheck and my whole thing, right? And so there's a more holistic view of law and the legal structure that exists. And then to become, like, a Supreme Court judge, like, in America, to become a Supreme Court judge, you just have to basically suck the president's dick, right? Like, you just have to be in on the president's good side, and then he's going to appoint you because you're going to, do what he wants. To become a Supreme Court judge in Canada, you have to be a judge for a long time, first of all. So you're already, like, vetted as a lawyer. You've got to be in, like, you have to be a professor, then you have to be a judge, and then you can, and then you have to also be like an appellate court judge, and that just puts you on the list, right? That just puts you on the list, and then from there, the prime minister gets to pick from this small pool of, like, judges who have all gone through this incredible vetting system that is structured to work for the benefit of the populace, right? And then that entire structure that exists and is, like, firm and strong in Canada works explicitly to uphold the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So that if some fucking idiot, like Doug Ford, for example, gets in and starts to pass unconstitutional legislation, well, this whole goddamn structure is just like, nah, or yeah, right? So that's why something like Bill C-10, like, everyone's losing their fucking mind about Bill C-10, but I'm just like, dude, there's this whole legal structure that if this was unconstitutional legislation, if this actually allowed the government to take away your freedoms, this entire structure would just be like, nah. That's why they put it to charter tests. They have judges look at their legislation before they even pass it, because they don't want their legislation to get struck down by the Supreme Court, right? They want their legislation to stand. And so they put it through charter tests. And that's exactly what's happening with Bill C-10. So it's so to me, that's actually the major difference between Canadian politics and American politics. That in America, it's just essentially a series of thugs and bribes, whereas in Canada, there is actually a legal structure that's like no, we are lawyers and judges, and this is our profession. This is what we do. You don't just get to be elected to it. Like, you have to actually know what you're talking about. You have to prove that you're actually in this for the benefit of the populace. Oh, you're welcome, Robin. Adjudicators are the worst. Yeah. Mach Deutschland vom Fascismus frei. I always want to put an R in that fascismus. The U.S. shouldn't do away with the electoral system. There should just be a prerequisite. Have you been to America? Do you guys get fancy wigs in court like England? At the high levels, yeah, they still wear the fancy wigs. At the high levels. Yeah, there's still a great deal of tradition and pomp in the Canadian system. So yeah. Yeah, and the USA is fucked, man. It's very difficult for me to believe. Like, let's open the map. Let's open the map. Depressed out of my mind. Gonna sing the song anyway. Try to elevate the mood. Elevate the mood. Elevate the mood. Any reason to open the map? Yeah. Very difficult for me to believe that California and Texas don't break off from this. Like, I just don't see how I don't actually see how the union maintains itself. That's the thing. That the yeah, no tradition under Ford's government. Yeah, and people underestimate how stressful living in America is. Yeah, it's super stressful, dude. Like, California becoming its own country, of course it could. It's the third largest economy on the continent. Like, they could just do that. And the independence movement has already started in California. It's already showing up as a ballot initiative, right? And like, it really pays to remember, like, there is that spirit around, right? Like, Britain voted to leave the EU. Brexit was real, right? And there's all kinds of independence movements that exist all throughout. So, fourth now. Oh well, can't stay at the top forever, right? But still, like, you have like Silicon Valley. You've got like major initiatives, and lots of people are starting to ask the question of like, wait, why are we paying federal taxes? Like, what are we getting? What are we actually getting for these federal taxes, right? And what you're getting is a war in the Middle East. That's what you're getting, right? Your federal taxes are basically destroying the Middle East. And so lots of people are starting to be like, no, I'm not interested in that. Like, and if you're not going to stop, then we're just going to leave, right? And they should, honestly. So I just don't see a path forward for the United States to make, like, that's thing. And what I'm saying is actually like Biden ran on unity, right? He ran a unity ticket, right? So he's aware that the states could just start breaking up, that the United States could just cease to exist. Like, the federal body of the United States just sort of breaks off and becomes its like own independent thing. But like, so we could in our lifetimes witness the balkanization of the United States. And like, you've got like Putin saying things like, what's happening in the United States looks an awful lot like what happened in the Soviet Union, right? And like, Putin is ex KGB, right? Like, he lived through the collapse of the Soviet Union, so he knows, and he's looking at it and he's being like, looks pretty similar. You don't think drones and other tools developed in the Middle East will keep the Union together? Not memeing. Yeah, the idea that war has been technologicalized or whatever, like that it's a high-tech kind of thing, that instead of having like 10,000 troops, you could literally have like 10,000 robots being run by like an AI. So there's not even people involved. Like, that's when we get into like a horror dystopia. Like, I am really of the opinion that the building of weapons of mass destruction itself, like the building of nuclear bombs and the building of like drones and robot armies, like, should be a war crime in and of itself. That the simple building of it should be a war crime. Like, the idea that we're gonna create like a technological army. So it's not even men and women that we're putting in harm's way. It's just like a robot army. Like, that should be a war crime. That should, just the doing of it should be a significant war crime. And yeah, I think that a big reason why the Middle Eastern war has continued on is the automation of war, right? Like, that we need far less people to actually become soldiers. We need far less people to actually run this machine, right? And the goal, of course, by the sociopath class is to create a military machine that runs itself. So no people involved. You're just like, you're off drinking your wine snifter or whatever, and you just tell the machine, destroy Afghanistan, and it does. Peru. Texas could brown out again because of the heat wave. They aren't laughing and pointing fingers at Cali anymore. Yeah. Well, and the Texas situation is so embarrassing, right? Like, anybody who wants to stand up and say, like, capitalism functions, I'm like, well, it's not working in Texas. Like, if capitalism worked, this wouldn't be an issue, right? Like, the reality is they should nationalize their power grid, right? Nationalize their power grid, actually repair it, actually improve it, streamline it. But you're in constant negotiation with, like, complete sociopaths who, like, let's just use these road systems as an example, right? So, like, the way it works is that, like, one person owns the line from Dallas to Houston, right? And they're not incentivized at all to, like, repair it or anything. And then there's a line from San Antonio to Houston that's owned by a different person, right? And so let's say, like, this line goes down. Well, this guy's just going to jack prices to try and get electricity into Houston. He's like, oh, you want to use my line? Well, then I'm going to double the price, right? Because they're sociopaths. They're not interested in helping anybody. And so their power grid should be nationalized. Like, how is it not a major security issue? How is it not considered a major national security issue to let a handful of sociopaths have control over whether or not Houston has power? Like, that's a major, major problem. Thoughts on Hassan Piker? Hassan does great work. Hassan does really, really good work. He's very passionate, but he's very intelligent. He's very knowledgeable. I find myself more often than not agreeing with him. I think that he's a great resource. I do wish that he was working to actually organize his people, right? I do wish that he was actually working to organize his people and connect them to an actual protest movement. But he seems happy to be kind of on the sidelines throwing stones. That would be my only critique of him. That I think if he actually tried to get connected to larger organizations, to mobilizing organizations, if he tried to turn his channel into a place to mobilize his people, to get them onto the streets, he would be effective at that. It would be effective. But I understand, like, that's a path that I don't know that he's even considered. And I can't speak for him. I do know that when he speaks with clarity and honesty. I don't think he has, like, an overarching agenda outside of just trying to throw stones at the establishment. So I'm a fan of Hassan Piker. The Young Turks have been bought, not to be trusted. They're neoliberal fascists now. I don't think I need to speak any further on that. Like, they stand as a testament that anybody can be bought. Anybody can be bought. Yeah, I'm sure Ted Cruz is pointing a lot because Ted Cruz has no soul, right? He's just like he's just like an empty vessel. Himbo, yeah. I love that he calls himself a himbo. It's so funny. Is it even possible to denuclear? Yes, it completely is, Kiri. It completely is. Don't believe me? Ask Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was actually working to denuclearize America hand in hand with the Russians, right? That think about this, like literally during the Cold War period, right? The United States and Russia were actually working together to diminish the amount of nuclear bombs in the world, right? And it wasn't until you got to George W. Bush that the nuclear bomb building was renewed, right? Which is, like, I mean, yeah, like George W. Bush is like a psycho, so of course he's going to build more nuclear bombs. And you have situations like Putin and Xi Jinping in China are both asking the United States, like, can we actually start talking about like reducing nuclear capacity? Like, if you are actually genuinely interested in pursuing any path of peace, shouldn't the first step of that be the denuclearization of the world? And Reagan agreed. Reagan was doing that. So and that's the thing that drives me crazy, is that like Reagan has reached like worship levels. Like, we're supposed to worship Reagan. But nobody actually points out that Ronald Reagan was denuclearizing, man. Like, Ronald Reagan wanted less bombs, and was successful. He successfully diminished the amount of nuclear bombs in the world. You want to talk about like every leader does carry with them a positive legacy, right? There's a negative legacy and a positive legacy, and if you ignore one or the other, then you end up being delusional. And a positive legacy of Ronald Reagan is that he worked very hard and was successful in denuclearizing the world. So it can be done. You just need to do it. And and Russia wants to, China wants to, lots of Europeans want to. They're very upfront about this. They talk about it. It's the United States that's building the nukes, right? And if the United States is building nukes, well, what do you do? What do you do? What can you do? Right? Especially while they're like surrounding China with, like, they're surrounding Iran with not nuclear bases, but with military bases. They're surrounding China with military bases. They're putting there are cruisers in the South China Sea, right? Like they are actively working to escalate tensions, right? While simultaneously building nuclear bombs. So it's like China's sitting there being like, well, what are we supposed to do about that? What can we do, right? So it's possible, we just have to do it. The power grid isn't a national security issue because the commons of this country are being dismantled and the rich are retreating to enclaves. Yeah, I think that's true. And yeah, Ted Cruz is just an embarrassment, period. You're absolutely right about that. Like, he's just a snake. Look how quickly he went from being like, wear the suit, clean-shaven, professional corporate guy, to being like a Duck Dynasty guy. Right? Like, he shows up and he's wearing like the vest and he's got like the beard, right? And all this kind of stuff. And it's completely that he just tried to he just changed his skin, right? He's just a snake. He just sloughed that skin off and now he's wearing this skin. And if suddenly the Republican Party was like hippies, let's go crazy. Let's say that suddenly the Republican Party would be full of hippies. Well, he'd be showing up with like the headband and the long hair and like smoking a doob and all that kind of stuff. Because he has no moral center. He has no soul. He just wants power. That's it. DSA 2022, let's go! Name last, how you doing? Thanks for being here. Nah, at this point you need nuclear. Or we need to all become Luddite peasants, so turn off the computer and start farming. Oh, you're talking about nuclear in terms of power, right? Like nuclear power. I don't know, solar is picking up. Like, solar is becoming like more and more prominent, more and more powerful. Really curious to see what USA does to China, Pakistan, Afghanistan deal. Which deal are you talking about there, Lonnie? Let's get specific with that. Oh, hey, Milius Genghis Khan. Well, Genghis Khan is in the chat. My goodness. How you doing, Milius? Good to see you. I don't think I've ever seen you in the chat. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. DSA was founded by Gloria Steinem, a CIA agent. Yeah. Did you see the first... Oh, is it out? Is it already out? The NDP are releasing ads. No, I haven't. Let's find that, because I like... This is my favorite thing to do. So, Ontario NDP ad. Recent. If it's not on the ONDP website, then I don't know what the hell, right? Nope. If it's not on the ONDP website, then what the hell, right? Like, what's... Go away. Be a part of it. Come on, NDP. You just released an ad and it's not on your website. Come on, NDP. Okay, so not on their website. So good start. Good start for the NDP. Oh, that's like way back. No, no, no. Is this it? Is this it? I'm going to say this is it.
There's this growing idea in Ontario that we don't have to settle anymore. We don't have to accept cuts, or wait longer, or expect less. We can end hallway medicine, have good schools and better jobs, fix what's wrong and do what's right, so that families get ahead and our kids have a great future. I want people to win this election, and you know what? Together, we can.
This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. Where I'm like, it like the. I know this is the 2018 ad, but this is exactly what I'm talking about with the NDP and why they drive me crazy, right? So
there's this
right off the top, like single piano playing, like dee 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 dee, so like calming, right? Really trying to like get you into like a calming sort of space where you're like boo 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 boo. But like you got to imagine like a dude with a beer watching a hockey game, right? Who's like yeah yeah, and then suddenly it's like doom 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 doom. So he's like off to the toilet or something. He's not going to stand there and listen to this.
Growing idea.
And like their very first picture is like trees, right?
There's this growing idea in Ontario.
And then it's like Andrea Horwath's bus. So instantly she is setting herself apart from the electorate, right? This is exactly what I talk about with the NDP. That the NDP do not view themselves as part of the electorate, but separate from the electorate. And it's obvious in how they advertise themselves. Right? That Justin Trudeau put himself on the bus, right? And it wasn't his campaign bus, it was a transit bus, right? So like he's presenting himself as part of the electorate, not separate from the electorate. And you'll see as this goes on. So Andrea's coming off her bus, right? Because she's not part of the electorate.
Have to settle anymore.
She's shaking hands separate from the electorate. Right?
We don't have to accept cuts or wait.
And look, who's talking in this picture?
Cuts.
Right? Is it the electorate or is it Andrea? Right? Like, fire your campaign managers, dude. Fire them. They're not helping you win. Ugh. Okay, anyway. Maybe if I go NDP 2021. No, I'm not finding it, bud. You're not part of the Discord, are you? Okay. Support Kshama Swant. I don't know who that is. The peace deal where China gets to further Belt and Road Initiative. China trying to negotiate peace there after USA left. Yeah, I mean, I think they would love that, because, like, the Belt and Road Initiative as it stands right now, like, China definitely wants to get a road, like, through here, right? They definitely want to get this all finished up, and it would be so much easier for them if they could get rail into Afghanistan, right? It would be so easy for them to just go from here and get rail right through there, right? But you can see they've got like all these plans, so they're having to go like up and around and over and down into Tehran, and of course they want to get more stuff. And I bet you they'd love to get down into India and all that, but like they'd love to get down through Afghanistan. It's tough for them though, and like all of this it's because it's so conflict ridden, and you just know that what they really ultimately want is they want to get a rail from here through like the Suez Canal, right? They want to get rail right through there, but that's not going to happen. You're getting into Iran, Israel, right? Like none of that's going to happen for them. So, but and you want to have like as many ways into Europe as you can get, right? Because like if they can just shut down Belarus right now, that causes them pretty major problems. But if you can get a rail in here, right? Anyway. So yeah, for sure they're trying to create redundancies in the system because they know that the Americans are going to fuck with them. It's hard to find. See, why is it hard to find? Like, why is this hard to find? It should be on the website. Tom Parkin Twitter, like, you made an ad, NDP. You should have it. You should have it on your website. Like, I don't know why why am I sifting through who the fuck is Tom Parkin in the first place? Like, is this it? Release this ad today. Here we go.
This past year, we've learned what really matters in our lives and what government does or doesn't.
Piano, piano. Chase away all your voters. They're gonna go pee right now. They're not gonna listen to you because they're busy drinking their buck of beer. Go away. Actual people, we need to vote for us.
Do also matters. We've seen bad choices with devastating consequences. Imagine instead a premier that chooses you, who protects workers, who stands up for local businesses, not big box stores, who instead of cutting, invests in healthcare and our kids. That's what matters to me.
If you're already voting NDP, that's fine, right? If you already are a fan of Andrea Horwath, if you're already looking at the NDP and being like, yep, probably going to vote NDP, fine, right? But for your undecided voters, for your even liberal voters, right? And certainly for your buck of beer, single issue voters, I want my hydro reduced. That's fucking nothing. That's not going to convince them of fucking anything. I am desperately worried. I am desperately worried that the NDP are just going to shit the bed in this election. This election, in my view, is theirs to lose. It is theirs to lose. And if this is what they're going to come out with, if this is their ammunition that they're using, they're going to lose. Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't use a ukulele and a chime in the music. Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly. Let's present ourselves as hippy-dippy, far left, soft, as we possibly can. There are people living in tents. There are people living in tents. I don't know how many times I have to fucking say this to you NDP friggin' people. There are people living in tents. Where's screwing Ford ads and Pretty Boy Trudeau, O'Toole the Tool? O'Toole the Tool, I like it. Pretty Boy Trudeau. Yeah, where's her nose ring or tattoo? Yeah, exactly, right? Just how to present yourself as woke as possible. Let's even.
This past year, we've learned what really matters in our lives.
This past year, we've learned and this assumes that anybody's actually listening, right? Which that's not, people are not going to sit there and let you lecture them, right? They're not interested in that, right? The second they see that the piano and they get the lecture going on, they're off. They're going to do something else, man. They're going to click away. They're going to go get some food or something, right?
And what government does or doesn't do also matters. We've seen bad choices with devastating consequences. Imagine.
See, and she's tiptoeing around it. We've seen bad choices with devastating consequences. Oh, like what? Like what? Right? From who? I just don't get why you're trying to pretend we're not in the middle of a collapsing society. And this soothing music, it actually counters what you're attempting to do, right? Putting on soothing music in order to kind of manipulate people into being this lovely kind of thing, it actually doesn't work, right? And and who's making the bad decisions? What bad decisions, right? This is an ad campaign, right? Go on the attack. Sorry, go on the attack. Because you know what the liberals are going to do? They're going to come out and be worst premier ever, get rid of this dumbass, and then they're going to turn to Andrea Horwath and be really? And that's all they're going to say about her. They're just going to be really? And guess what? Everyone's going to go, oh yeah, really? Oh yeah. She's coming out being hey everybody, love and peace and joy, we can do better. better, and all of this kind of, and then nobody wants a leader like that. Nobody wants a leader like that. Nobody wants a leader like that. Nobody wants a leader to come out and be like, woofity flooby, the bloobity fla, and then the floobsy will doobity boobity ba. Nobody wants a leader like that. Nobody. I don't know how much more obvious it can be. I don't know how many campaigns you have to tank with this obviously bad strategy of coming out and being like, hi, I'm NDP. Vote NDP because NDP. It obviously fails. It obviously doesn't work. Fire your campaign team. Grow some fucking balls. Call people out. Go on the attack. Like, there have been bad decisions made. Like what? From who? Like, why do the NDP suck so bad at this? Like, why is it that when they're in the House, they'll pull out a fucking dagger and stab someone and completely disembowel them and leave them bleeding on the side of the road and then spit on them and step on their face and be like, from the unions, go fuck yourselves. And then the second the camera is put on them to be like, oh, by the way, the entire world is going to see this because this is an ad, they go, hi, I'm from the NDP. And they fucking look like morons. Like, Andrew Horvath looks like a fucking moron here. Yeah, liberals outspin the NDP. Well, and it's not even outspin at this point. Like, it's the NDP outspinning themselves, right? That they seem to think that what people want is like this calm, smiling idiot. Nobody wants that. How many times do we need to prove it to you? How many elections do you need to lose with this strategy before you realize that what people want is what I'm doing right here? This is what people want. What people want is they want you to go, Doug Ford's a fucking psychopath, eh? It's really obvious. We need to get rid of the fucking worst premier that's ever existed. Fucking get rid of all the bullshit he's ever done, right? And actually start putting in policies to get rid of what? The tent city. You notice that there's people living in tents? You notice that? We should get rid of this. Fuck these liberals and conservatives. Vote NDP. There's your election campaign, but instead, hi, I'm Andrea Horvath. Vote for me because piano music and wishes and fairies. Get fucked. Get fucked. This is embarrassing. Release better ads. Fuck you. This is an embarrassment. This insults me. Fuck you, Andrea Horvath, if this is your strategy. Fuck you. You deserve the loss you get. Yeah, to be fair to the liberals, all they are capable of is spin, so they should be pretty good at it. Yeah. Hold on. They got the Sri Lankan harbor. Surely going to link the system. Yep, they did end up with the Sri Lankan harbor. We just need the Vulcans to find us and give China warp drives. If I'm an alien, dude, I am not coming down here. I am not coming down here. I am not coming down here at all. Like, there's no way I'm going to show up and be like, the only reason for aliens to be looking at us right now is to find out whether or not we are a threat to them. That's it. That's what they're looking at. They're asking themselves, like, are these humans a threat to us? Are they gonna actually figure their shit out, or are they gonna, like, nuke everything, right? And, like, why do you think they keep showing up in front of military vehicles recently, right? The Pentagon keeps releasing reports of, like, hey, we've got UFOs, here's some footage, like, we confirm it, we're being upfront with it. You know what they're doing? They're putting a drone in front of our military craft to see if we shoot them, right? That's what they're doing. They're testing to see what our response is to just an unexpected craft, right? Are we going to shoot first to ask questions later? Are we just going to try and dominate and control? Or we're going to try and down these crafts so that we can analyze them and all this kind of shit, right? Of course that's what these fucking aliens are up to, right? If they are existent at all. They're for sure looking at us being like, are they a threat? can we reason with them? Right now, the answer is obviously no. We're obviously like destroying ourselves. And like, if the answer becomes yes, if these aliens look at us and be like, oh, these guys are a threat to us, they'll just remove our atmosphere. They'll just be like, yeah. And if anybody goes like, isn't that like a big genocide and all? You know, yeah. But like, we would be ants. Like, that'd be like the same as like kicking over an anthill, right? We're so far behind these guys that like, if they were hostile to us, we'd already be dead, right? So they're looking at us being like, are these guys a threat? Like, do we actually have to be concerned about it? And currently, if you ask me, the answer is fucking yes. Like, the only thing that's saving us is that there are nations on this planet that are not psychotic. Yeah, that dreamy piano music makes me feel so comfy. Tell me more, right? Yeah, right. Hoping they seriously get somebody better to do their campaign ads. Vince, you joined the Discord by donating $1. If you donate $1 to my Patreon, getting to be part of the Discord is part of the deal. I, of course, recommend more than $1, but it's at least $1. The boxing match with Trudeau and the conservative wife beater was great. I don't know what you're referring to there, Ruth, but that sounds awesome. Yeah, NDP is shooting them in their foot, losing a great opportunity. Yeah. Yeah, she's talking to her grandma. Yeah, like, she's like... And, like, again, I'll say, like, this ad is fine for NDPers, right? If you are already voting for Andrea Horwath, fine. But if this is their general strategy across the board, they lose. Like, they lose. And they lose handily. Damn boxes. I sounded like a Sim character. Oh, good. That's what I was going for. Yeah, Ruth, I think you're absolutely on the money here. Maybe she should be in front of a tent city. I don't know why she's not using these as political props. Like, they're right fucking there. Like, it's really obvious that there's a problem, right? It's really obvious that there's a problem. And, like, instead, where is she? Like, where is she even? Like, where is she? What is this? Right? Is she in a hospital? Like, where is she? She's in where? Like, I don't even know where she fucking is. Right? So, like, it's literally, and here's another thing. I didn't want to point this out initially, but I will, because I'm a fucking asshole about this kind of stuff. You can see her forget and then remember her line. It happens right away. You can see her forget and then remember her line. And then that's the cut they went with.
This past year, we've learned what really matters in our life.
She forgot her line right there. We've learned what really matters, right? Like, she forgot her line and then she came back and they were like, okay, good enough. The Ontario NDP are hiring people to do their campaign for 2022. You should apply. Are they hiring? Is that true? NDP hiring campaign 2021. If that's true, dude, I definitely will put in my... Because, like, somebody's got to be telling these guys, like... I'll look at that. Somebody's got to be telling these guys that their ads suck. Like, that their ads, not only do they suck, but they're, like... They're counter-effective, right? Like, it's one thing to suck, but it's another thing to, like, actually chase people out of the room. Tell them to talk to Rachel Notley on how to attack cons and win the polls for it. Yeah, Rachel Notley really knows what she's up to, right? The fact that Rachel Notley won an election in Alberta and then lost an election and then is still the leader of the NDP, that... She's a very impressive individual. Rachel Notley. And I mean, like, there are criticisms that you can put towards Rachel Notley, but I think a lot of those criticisms are a bit detached from what the reality of Albertan politics actually is. That, like, Notley is criticized because she's not, like, aggressive against the oil industry. And I'm like, I don't think you can be the premier of Alberta and be aggressive against the oil industry, right? Like there's some very real things that are happening in Alberta that you've got to kind of account for. But she's a very impressive leader, Notley. I won't be too surprised to see Rachel Notley get power again in Alberta, do a tenure in Alberta, and then move on to federal leadership at some point. She's a very impressive leader. She's a very impressive leader. Yeah, Ocean, first of all, thanks for being here. Yeah, and this is just it. Nobody wants to vote for somebody who's being nice right now. What are you fucking talking about? There's literally a psychopath in office. Like, there's literally a guy who is subverting our democracy, who is slashing funding for literally everything you care about, who's creating tent cities, who's literally lying every step of the way, who's erecting privatized institutions so that he can abuse the elderly and make money doing it. Like, this guy's a fucking psycho, and you're standing there being like, hi, I'm the nice person who's gonna be nice to you. Like, fuck off. I think you just running the ONDP would amazing and watching the ads. Yeah. The thing with the ONDP and that's the thing. They've out-fundraised the PCs and the Liberals. They've got more cash, right? Like, they're not poor. Like, that's just it. Like, they've got the most money. That people are obviously throwing money at them, right? They obviously want change. They obviously want this kind of thing. And, like, we want to vote for the people that we see in the House. Anytime anybody comes and says, and puts like a clip of the NDP onto the internet, is it the NDP being nice? Or is it the NDP being fucking actually fighting? Right? Right? Like, do we want to see the NDP being like, hi, I'm the NDP? Or do we want to see the NDP who's there to fucking grab some people by the balls, take him by the throat, and then like powerbomb slam them? Which one of those two do you think the populace would like to see? It is a problem with a lot of left-leaning parties. Where my positists at? I don't know what a positist is, bud. Well, and being too and like take a look at Tom Mulcair. Tom Mulcair, in my view, is like the case in point for this. Like, Tom Mulcair literally tanked his whole campaign with this being nice shit, with coming out and being an idiot and smiling like Raffi and all that kind of stuff. He should have won that election, right? But instead, he embarrasses himself, gets defeated by some upstart with a family name, right? Literally allows himself to get outflanked on the left in the campaign, and like revitalizes the Liberal Party from the ashes. If you'll recall, the Liberal Party wasn't even, they were the third rung party in that election, right? That's how bad Tom Mulcair fucked that election up. That it went from, it was the Conservatives in power, the NDP were the leaders of the opposition, and the Liberals were the third rung. And it went from that to the Liberals being the majority party. That is an enormously failed campaign, and it was all about this, just be nice. I'm a big fucking teddy bear. It's embarrassing. And so to see Andrea Horwath doing the same thing, get fucked. Get out of here. You deserve to lose. You deserve to lose if you're running that way. They're doing the same thing Biden did. Calm down, just relax. I'm going to take this pillow over your face. Give into the dark. Everything is fine. I got to tell you, but if that's what they did, if they literally were doing that, like just taking a pillow and like putting it over someone's face... Yeah, okay. This is the ad. Everything Andrea just did here, okay? So exactly this, except Doug Ford is lying on a bed behind her and she's steadily smothering him with a pillow. Okay? Exact same ad.
This past year, we've learned
smothering
what
Doug
really
Ford
matters
with
in
a
our
pillow.
lives. And what government does or doesn't do also matters. We've seen bad choices with devastating consequences. Imagine instead a premier that chooses you, who protects workers,
And Ford's
who
just
stands
there.
up for local businesses, not big box stores, who instead of cutting, invests in healthcare and our kids. That's what matters to me.
That's your fucking ad, Andrea. The exact same ad, but she's just like smothering Doug Ford with a fucking pillow. I'd vote for that. I'd vote for that. This planet would be prime directive and allowed to either blow ourselves up or be contained in the universe for our own good. Yeah, exactly, Wigwith. How you doing, bud? Oh God, you're deep. Of course I'm deep on this, man. Like the fucking end. It's annoying to see the NDP do the same mistake over and over and over again. Like they should have been. Tom Mulcair should have been the prime minister. Like period. He should have been the prime minister. Andrea Horwath should be the premier of Ontario. Right? It's obvious. It's clear, and they keep doing the same fucking mistake, which is treating us like babies. That's what it really comes down to. This like soft music, like talking to us like we're fucking babies. That's what they're doing. They're talking to us like we're fucking babies, right? What ideology do these aliens follow? Yeah, we have no idea. We have to assume they're peaceful. That's it. Because if they weren't, we'd already be dead. Like they're so much more advanced than we are, right? There are things that they could have already done, right? To eliminate us if they were hostile. If it was just like we need their resources, right, they would have taken them. We would be done already. There wouldn't be a conversation. So clearly they have to be peaceful. They have to be. Because anything else doesn't make sense. The thing is, the ONDP have a lot of events in June, and they better step up their ground game with better ads. You can't rely on volunteer only for 2022. Make good ads. Well, and like, stop hiding the poison. Stop hiding the poison. That's what this does. That's what this soft-serving bullshit does. It hides the poison. Go to those tent cities. Show people the tent cities. Right? Start calling them Dougie dens. Like, there are literally tent cities erected in the middle of Toronto. Like, stop bullshitting this. Stop pretending that like this stuff doesn't exist. Stop making the problem invisible. Yeah, she should be in front of a tent and say, this is what liberals and conservatives do. This is what they want. Well, we'll take a look at that. Before Trudeau was prime minister, he was challenged by a pretty boy conservative who ended up going to jail for beating his wife and doing drugs and using his dad's house illegally as an address. No kidding. I didn't know that. That's kind of hilarious. More NDP platitudes. I will never forget when the NDP leadership scolded Nikki Ashton for hosting a conversation with Jeremy Corbyn earlier this year. Yeah, shame that they're the most left party we've got weak. Well, and Nikki Ashton, in my view, is like one of the most, like she's just here too early. It's good that she's young, because when she's older, she might actually fit in with the left wing swing that's happening. She's just too left. She's too far left right now. But I like Nikki Ashton. She's from Manitoba. I like Nikki Ashton. Anytime she talks, and I'm just like, yeah, like here's what I'm talking about when I'm like saying the NDP need to start grabbing people by the balls. Like Nikki Ashton is here to grab people by the balls and pull. Like she's here to do that shit. But it is a shame that like I do think right now she's too early. Things need to be a touch worse for somebody like Nikki Ashton to actually start winning leadership positions in power. But I like her, and I hope she does really well. I hope she continues advancing. Hey, Carla, how you doing? The ads seem to be aimed at old people I clean for who are afraid the NDP are too radical. Well, that's just it. Like, why are you talking to the people who aren't going to vote for you in the first place? Like, why are you talking to the people who are not going to vote for you in the first place? Let them say that you're too radical. Oh, because there's never in the history of anything been ever a time when a bunch of old people said, these guys are dangerous and radical, and then the youth started doing it, right? That's never happened in the history of humanity. It's never occurred that when old people say something is dangerous, the youth go, oh, you think that's dangerous? Then I'm definitely going to do it. That's never happened with rock and roll. That's never happened with drugs. That's never happened with video games, television, movies. That's never happened with everything in our culture all the time, constantly. And you're sitting here trying to placate a group of fucking old people who are never going to vote for you in the first place, while completely ignoring and alienating the very people you need to actually win the election. Go fuck yourself. Stop insulting us, right? And if a bunch of old people start to say, wow, these guys are really radical, guess what? That's what we fucking want. That's what we fucking want. Like, I don't understand how you can't get it through your head that we want to alienate the boomers. Like, I just don't get how you don't see that that's the case. Like, and you're releasing these, like, fucking... Unless you reshoot that ad and have her smothering Doug Ford with a pillow, which, I'm telling you guys, that's brilliant. That's fucking brilliant. Posadist is communist alien. Oh, okay, cool. I love watching Notley and Question Period take on Kenny. This is how you start a movement. She is far from nice, but I look forward to see it every day. Well, and also, Notley, like... Here's an unfortunate truth, okay? And this is something that we can't get around, is that Andrea Horvath is kind of just a nice person, right? And I know that's, like, kind of dumb to say in terms of politics or something, but, like, she presents...
This past year...
Like, I do believe that this is who she is, right? Like, and I don't want to shit on her for this, but, like, the truth is...
We've learned what really matters in our lives.
Like...
And what government does.
She's just kind of a substitute teacher. Right? Like, she just kind of presents as your aunt, right? She's just kind of like a nice, likable, and that's kind of how she presents. Whereas Rachel Notley, like Rachel Notley could be the captain of the Starship Enterprise, right? Like, you just look at her, and you just know, just from looking at her, here's a lady that if I cross, she's going to cross me back, right? Like, if I was in a boxing match with Rachel Notley and I gave her one in the gut, she's going to give me an overhand cross. Like, she's not going to take that shit. Whereas, like, Andrea Horvath, I, like, think if I went up to her and, like, gave her one in the gut, she'd go, like, oh, you hit me. Oh, no. She'd cover up and, like, get back, all that kind of stuff. Fucking not Rachel Notley, man. You try to hit Rachel Notley, she's going to hit you back. She's going to hit you back. And you can tell. You can just tell, right? And I know that that's, like, not good. Like, don't judge a book by its cover and all that kind of stuff. But guess what? That's what people do, right? And if you want to be in politics and if you want to actually try to win an election, you have to accept that huge sections of your base are basically going to look at you and be like, nah, substitute teacher, nah. And they're going to move on. And that's it. You're done. Right? They're not going to listen to what you have to say. They're not going to listen to the lecture. They're not going to listen to any of that kind of shit. They're going to take one fucking look at you, go, nah, and move on. And the truth is, like, the NDP, Andrea Horvath, she just does come across as like a substitute teacher, right? She just does. And that's kind of who she is. And, like, that's why you end up with these, like, soft ads and all this kind of stuff, because it is kind of who she is. Anyway, dude, that hurts. Which statement specifically? I don't want to insult anybody, but I mean, I'm depressed out of my mind right now, so I'm fucking just laying it out. Yeah, she's not a socialist by definition, but is a solid European social democrat. Yeah, something far better than the far right fascist. I mean, you have to be a social democrat if you're in the NDP, I think. And Dougie Dens. Or Trudeau Towns. I like Trudeau Towns too. Right-wingers are good at being mean during campaigning. Yeah, it's also why they're bad at comedy, because they just come off as idiots. Yeah, that's really the truth. And, like, and the thing is that, like the success of reality TV shows alone should tell you that people are mean, right? We're catty, sarcastic, mean bitches. We love seeing people get voted off. We love seeing people get defeated. We don't actually care who wins these things, right? That's the great secret about reality TV game shows, right? We generally don't actually care who wins. We care to see people lose. We like seeing people get the fuck out of there. And conservatives are the ones who have, like, en masse given themselves permission to be mean, right? Like, and nobody who votes conservative is going to ever be like, too mean. That's never going to happen, right? Because they understand that it's a competition where there's a winner and there's a loser, and they get that if you've got to go in there with a dagger and stab the guy in the throat, you got to do that. That's what you got to do, and they want to see that. They want to see that. Ideas worthy for future of SA Canada campaigns. Yeah. Well, and also, like, honestly, I would be more happy with Andrea if she just kind of told the truth more, right? Like, there's a difference between, like, she's just tiptoeing around this bullshit, right? She's just tiptoeing around things, right? Like, people are very thick. Like, a lot of the stuff I do and a lot of the music I make, one of the big critiques that I get is a bit on the nose, don't you think, John? Bit on the nose? And I'm like, you've met these guys, right? Like, yeah, if you're in a fight with somebody, you want to put it right on their nose. You don't want to, like, subtly try to convince them to do something. You want to fucking put it right on the fucking nose. You know, bam, right on the nose. And Andrea's just not putting it on the nose, man. She's just not. She's just sort of like it's like she's in a fist fight, but she's got, like, glitter, you know? Social democratic parties need to go back to old school social democracy instead of this new free market third way ideology. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Well, because right now, like, most NDPers across the board are just sort of orange liberals. They just think that capitalism needs to be reformed, and that's it. They wait for the pity vote, or I'm not voting cons, or libs vote. Yeah. Kindergarten teacher. Yeah, yeah. Hey, Demand Better, how you doing? How you doing? Yeah, totally see her as Kate Mulgrew on Voyager. Exactly, Wigwith. I agree with you completely. Like, that was the thing that bothered... Okay, we're going to get into some... I love Star Trek, okay? And if you want to talk Star Trek with me, I will talk Star Trek with you all friggin' day long. Like, for me, no word of a lie. My ideology is like... the Bible, not the evangelical fucking interpretation of the Bible, but the Bible, the works of Shakespeare, Star Trek: The Next Generation. Like, those three things. And the shame about Kate Mulgrew is that she was a really excellent actress who was exactly well cast for that part, and then they forgot to hire writers, and their writers were just shit. It's such a shame what happened on Voyager. Like, Voyager could have been, like... it could have been, like, masterful. It could have been super brilliant. But they just took all of the conflict and all of the issues and then just kind of like half of Janeway's crew were Maquis. They weren't Federation, right? And there was never really an actual conflict between those two groups. They just kind of like, Chakotay will be the second in command. And then we'll have, like, an episode where these two groups kind of have, like, a little sort of hallway conflict or whatever. But, like, there was never, like, a genuine mutiny. There was never, like, genuine concessions that needed to be given to the Maquis. They just kind of disappeared, right? And I'm like, no, like, that should have been a major part of the whole show, was this constant internal conflict between these two groups that were not necessarily allies, right? Anyway. I wish Horvath had stepped down after the election to give a new leader 4 years in opposition to build a new brand for the party. If she loses this election, she has to resign. Like, this is her election to lose. And if she loses this one, she has to resign. And I kind of view her more as like a Moses leading people to the promised land kind of thing. Like, it is completely possible that her predecessor will kind of continue carrying the torch. which I think is fine. Like, you could have a real Moses into Joshua sort of situation, right? Where Moses gets you to the promised land and then Joshua goes into the promised land. Horvath could make a great minister, but doesn't have the drive to take on the Moby Dick of Ford. Emphasis on the dick. Let's have Tom Mulcair with his nice clowny face do an endorsement ad for Horvath. Yeah, exactly. I do follow BreadTube. Yeah, I do follow BreadTube. Trudeau Towns, Hoovervilles. Yeah, exactly. Voyager was very hit or miss, but when it was on, it was still, yeah, Star Trek is good Star Trek. That's my perspective as well. Star Trek is Star Trek, right? Even bad Star Trek. Like, Star Trek Discovery is probably the worst Star Trek that was ever made. And it was still very watchable. Like, my complaint about Discovery was that it didn't actually attempt to address actual issues. Like, if you watch Star Trek Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine to a degree, even the original stuff, they were constantly ruddering up against very important social issues, taking strong positions on those social issues and defending themselves, right? Like, that does not happen in Discovery. Discovery is mainly just pew-pew and, like, look how cool the Klingons look now. And like, they'll have some kind of moralizing thing at the end of the episode where the lead character will, like, do a voiceover over top of, like, a montage or something. But it's not actually, like, they're not actually taking strong positions. They're not actually, like, defending a position, right? I wish they would. And Picard was also very disappointing from this perspective. The whole season was about, like, just AI and all this, but they didn't really. It wasn't like a strong position from a serious perspective. And honestly, the whole season, like, there was an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, which was where they put Data on trial to see if he was a piece of property or whether or not he had, like, rights as an individual. And that single episode was better than the whole season of Picard from this perspective of taking a stance and defending your position, right? Which Star Trek: The Next Generation does extremely well. Nobody does this anymore. It's not actually something that exists. Are you a Marxist, Leninist, Trotsky, Maoist? I don't subscribe to any of that. I think that my position on leaders is always, and it doesn't matter, Western leaders, capitalist leaders, it doesn't matter, is that there is always something good that happened. And there is always something bad that happened. And I feel like if you once you subscribe fully to, like, being a Maoist or being a Marxist, you end up having to kind of defend the shitty stuff. And I'm like, I'm not interested in that. I'm far more holistic. And I've been accused of being kind of like a soft communist for doing this. And if that's the case, then so be it. Because, like, I don't think it makes sense to throw out somebody's entire work because you disagree with a sliver of it, right? I just don't think that makes any sense. And the truth said, like, one of the great shames of the Soviet Union was that Trotsky and Stalin couldn't bury the hatchet with one another. That they genuinely did not have disagreements on theoretical lines. That they just didn't like each other. That Trotsky thought Stalin was stupid and Stalin thought Trotsky was arrogant. And guess what? They were both right. Like, and it was like, if they had instead managed to bury the hatchet and actually, like, figured something out, it would have made the Soviet Union stronger. And that's kind of my opinion across the board. Like, there are things that Mao did that I think we can say were a mistake. But I don't think that excludes from the conversation the things that Mao did that were good. And same story with, like, Karl Marx's vision of the future of communism was utopian and doesn't actually work. But his critique of capitalism is incredibly powerful, right? So I just think we can be more accepting. And we don't need to be so morally pure along these lines. And I don't think Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, Mao, Stalin did anything that excludes them from the conversation. It's not like Hitler, right? Like, somebody like Hitler, you're like, no, anything this guy said we can just fucking get rid of, right? But, like, so, like, I guess that's a long form way of me saying yes, I'll read and accept and analyze and think about any of that stuff. And I'm not going to put it aside because there's like a one-liner or something that happened within their leadership that was not positive. Because that always happens. That always happens. If that was your worldview, if that's how you view the world, then you can never be anything, because everybody did something. Because they're humans. And I think fundamentally that's my position, right? These guys are just people. Like, we treat them as if they're gods, or if they have like this iconic power, or they're like this specter that goes around. They're just people. They're just humans being humans, attempting to figure out how to do something. And if you treat them like that, I think you have a better time of it. I think Matt Christman pointed out it's the party of don't be a pussy versus the party of don't be a dick. And the latter has no fight in them. Yeah. Imagine if she was walking past COVID clinics, tent cities, being attacked by gangbanger cons and libs, and she pushes them off to the side and keeps walking, explaining everything that wasn't done. Yeah. Discovery and Picard are literally just Star Wars, though. Yeah, I think you're right on the money, Robin. And this is like the classic capitalism thing. They claim that they're going to create like a bunch of different stuff, but really they just end up vomiting out the same shit. And like, if somebody could actually point out to me the fundamental difference between like Neo Star Trek, Neo Star Wars, and the Avengers, I'd love to see it. What is fundamentally the difference between these things? That if the Starship Enterprise showed up and a Star Destroyer showed up while the Avengers were fighting on the planet below, it would be like, the nerds would go like, oh my goodness, yes! But like, we as like normies would just be like, yeah, okay, that's fine. So Enterprise shows up, Star Destroyer shows up, pulls out the lightsaber, right? Thor's got his hammer, right? It's all fucking the same. Because none of them actually have a coherent ideology, right? Nobody's actually attempting to defend anything. It's literally just like a big scary alien is going to take over the universe or whatever. Who gives a fuck? The thing they are realizing, 2 more ads, 15 seconds each sometimes this month. So yeah, we'll see how those end up being. Yeah, we'll see. I can't watch Discovery. I made a few episodes in and seen some rundowns, but it's just not the same. Yeah. Modern Star, and and that's a very good observation, Wigwith, when it comes to Star Trek. The Orville does take strong positions, right? That Seth MacFarlane, he really likes old school Star Trek and like that old school way of doing stuff. And so the Orville, while it's goofy and funny and it has a kind of Seth MacFarlane way of doing things, they take strong positions on issues of the day, right? And they actually confront these issues and confront things that are going on in the world and take strong positions and defend them. And you can disagree with their defense, and you can disagree, but at least they're doing that, right? And it's an embarrassment for modern Star Trek that literally the guy that runs Family Guy, right? Just like this fucking like comedian who loves dick and fart jokes and shit like this, has made the best Star Trek since probably Deep Space Nine. Sorry, Voyager. You kind of did suck. Sorry. He was more than a hero. He was a Union man. O'Brien, Deep Space Nine. This is the power of math, people. Tilly, Discovery. Yeah. The Ontario legislature returns September 13th, so I guess that's why the ONDP putting out ads through the summer. But they better be more aggressive. Yeah. Libs are solely concerned with decorum and rules. They'll be marched to the gallows as long as everything is done by the book. One thing that a lot of communists, mostly online, defend communist leaders to a T, even when there is evidence of some of their bad deeds. Well, and that's just it. Like, I mean, let's be real, Ocean. Like, my favorite person to talk about is Stalin, right? Because Stalin, in my view, here, Joseph Stalin. Stalin, in my view, was... this is what people think of when they think of Stalin. This is the view, right? But this is Stalin kind of in his advanced years. When I think of Stalin, I see a gunslinger. I see the guy who was wanted by the Tsars, who was kind of like a desperado gunslinger type, right? I see a guy who was more like You know the guy from Firefly? What was his name? Malcolm? Something like that? I see him kind of like that way, right? Like, look at this guy. He looks like Jesse James. He looks like he would, like, open up the doors to the saloon and everybody would turn and look at him, right? And he would, like, he looks like a guy who's going to, like, throw back the duster and pull out the pistol and shoot a guy, right? Like, and if you actually read Stalin's history, that's kind of who he was, right? That he gets connected to Lenin and Trotsky and all that crew, but he's not like the theoretical politician. He's the guy, they sent him to, like, do war and to lead troops and to fight, right? Because that's who he was. He was like a leader of men in a visceral, like, let's go take these fucking Tsarists down, right? And of course he's gonna do dumb shit. Of course he's gonna do stuff that you can look at and be like, maybe not, bud. But that's what makes him a person. That's what makes him a human fucking being, right? Like, and again, I'll hit it. I just wish that him and Trotsky had been able to bury the hatchet and had to realize that, like, this petty fight that they had going on, which was strictly based on personal reasons. Like, they just didn't like each other. If they had buried the hatchet and actually been like, no, we can work together for the benefit of the Soviet Union, it would have been for the benefit of the Soviet Union and perhaps the communist project overall. And so, and I think other communists get really mad with me because whenever I watch other communists online, they get really, like, it's like they're Star Wars and Star Trek nerds, right? That they're like, that they're trying to nitpick and find the thing and, like, this is the linchpin that I can pull out from underneath this that makes the whole thing collapse. And they're trying to convince me why, like, Mao is better than Stalin in that, like, Star Wars versus Star Trek kind of way, right? And meanwhile, I'm standing here being like, I don't know, they both seem fine. They both have their goods and their bads, and, you know, they're just people trying to lead their own organization and trying to make it happen. And yeah, of course they made mistakes. They're people. They're people making mistakes. You know, that's fine. Why isn't she talking about Ford's authoritarian new rule and legislator this past week or C10? Well, I don't want her to talk about C10. C10 is a nothing. It's a nothing burger. But, like, yeah, this like, yeah, like, it is a lot of stuff lifted from TNG. Had Kathleen won the 2018 election and the 3-year UBI pilot project she started off was successful, do you think we would have had a full-on UBI implementation for all Ontarios by now? No. No. The only reason Wynne was doing that UBI project was because she was being threatened from the left. And, like, this is what the Liberals are going to do, and they're going to kick it down the can as far as they can, over and over and over again. The only way that they will ever actually implement a UBI pilot or a UBI fully is if they have a UBI in place already, like a pilot project in place already, and they're threatened that they're going to lose power, so they'll implement. Right? That's the only way it'll actually happen. And do I think we would have had a full-on UBI implementation for Ontarios by now? No. They would have found a reason to kick it down the can, just to keep kicking it down, because ultimately, like, it doesn't benefit corporate capitalists, right? Even though it does actually benefit corporate capitalists, because who do you think gets all that money, right? Like, that instead of us just taking the money and giving it to corporate capitalists so they can jam it into offshore accounts, we're going to give it to the poor so that they can buy food and shelter from who? The corporate capitalists, who are then going to take that money and jam it into offshore shelter. Like, I mean, I agree, interesting take. Yeah, honestly, I think it's the only honest take. Like, if you want to be, like, honest about how to discuss these world leaders, they're just fucking people. They're just human beings making mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes work. Like, they don't really know what they're doing. Like, they're just trying stuff and hoping it works out, right? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And the ones that don't, we can just be like, oh, that didn't work. But I just think, like, oh, that didn't work, so Stalin is, you know, and we could get rid of the whole idea. Forget, that's dumb. I think that is dumb. Like, no, that worked, that didn't. This we can take, this we can. And if you're not approaching everybody with that attitude, I just think you're going to kind of paint yourself into a corner eventually. Like, Apparently Ontario is going to interstate. I'm not surprised by this. Like, we're sub 400 cases now. It doesn't look like we're going to have another swing up. The variants look like they're well in control. Yeah, we could be opening pretty soon. Have you seen Del Duca's new tweets about voting in 2022? ONDP members are even saying on Twitter that the ONDP need to get better with their social media. Del Duca, this is exactly what I'm talking about here, dude. Like, Del Duca is clean when it comes to his Twitter feed. Like, his Twitter stuff is like, he called Doug Ford the worst premier ever, right? While Horvath is standing there being like, what you are doing is unacceptable, he's literally like, worst premier ever. Vote Liberal. And we're like, yeah. There's a message I can get on board with. And I'm very concerned that, like, the Liberals in Del Duca are just going to come out and they're going to just do exactly what I'm saying, which is they're going to tell it how it is. They're going to put Del Duca in front of a tent city, right? They're going to do all this stuff that the NDP should 100% be doing. And they're going to walk away with a win, just like what happened with Tom Mulcair, right? Okay. So this is what's going to happen, guys. I'm going to go pee, I'm going to sing a song, and then we're going to continue this stuff. Be right back. So for those of you who are new to the feed, this is something I do. I try to do it at 7 o'clock, but, you know, depression, who cares? This is a song that I made up myself. I like to sing this one when I'm depressed. So if you're one of these people who keep asking me to, like, record stuff, maybe put your finger on the record button. Gotta sleep another month inside this car. The wage they pay me with don't get me very far. The chains that hold me break me down, but they don't scar. Can't even drink away my blues inside a bar, and this year sucks. This year sucks. Can you blame a man for trying to give it up, and this year sucks. Another day won't help that pain inside your back. The days get harder, but it's too hard to keep track. They keep you tired before your soul opens a crack. And God don't care what monkeys think about the facts, and this year sucks. This year sucks. Can you blame a man for trying to give it up, and this year sucks. So sit atop your pile of bones and bloody gold, and human sacrifice don't stop you being old. At least you'll die before the bomb you set explodes. We're gonna burn Yeah, and that's that. Ugh. Ugh. I have to. I have to. That's how you get rid of the demon. That's how you exorcise the demon. New Echoes polls show Liberals at 35, Conservatives at 26. What? No. It's not guaranteed that the Liberals are getting another 4 years, dude. The polls... So there's two things. Polls are accurate, right? Polls are accurate for the moment that they are taken, right? That polls are not predictive, right? If anything, polls are actually like regressive. They're showing you what people thought back in time, right? I do a poll like January 1st, release it January 2nd. Well, then that's what's telling you what people thought on January 1st, right? And you're just seeing it January 2nd. And they're not meant to be predictive. You're not supposed to see these and be like, and this predicts this outcome. Especially because, so that's point one. And especially because, point two, Canadians are fickle. We are incredibly fickle when it comes to politics. We don't pay attention to politics between elections. And there's good reason for that. I used to get upset about that, but I'm over it now because people are so exhausted and so overworked and so focused and so hyper-focused on their own lives because they've got to be, right? And everybody's working and everybody's exhausted and angry and frustrated, right? So when they like pick up a phone or do an online survey or anything, when they're all bleary-eyed or anything, they're like, I don't know, liberal. That's what I did last time. Okay, click. And that's it. And so... and you can see this. This is an observable phenomenon that once the election starts, people's opinions change dramatically. You can go look at polling data from literally any election, and this is the truth. That there is dramatic shifts that occur in the opinion of the populace 4 weeks out from an election. So all these polls are telling you is what an exhausted, bleary-eyed, not paying any attention whatsoever people think of the political system at the moment. When the election actually starts, then people actually start talking to one another. Then people might actually start to listen to voices like mine. Then people actually read an article. Then people actually start to talk to their friends and neighbors about this. And there's like this brief period of time where we all have permission to talk about this, right? And opinions change. They can change dramatically. So like, don't let it get you down. Don't let it get you down. Are you one of my Patreons, DM? I think you are, right? Beatles Revolution. Yeah, I knew that one was going to come up eventually. Hold on. Okay, I'll learn that one, bud. That should be a pretty easy one. And thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that, DM. It has one huge guitar. I wouldn't have it any other way. Big guitar for a big voice. Imagine being in your 70s or 80s, worth billions, and spending any of your remaining time on Earth working to make sure your tax rate doesn't go up, even if it means billions of other people your age will suffer. How is that not sociopathic behavior? Yep. Into the memes. Into the memes. And this kind of stuff is happening. And I've been seeing the polling data from COVID. People are feeling better. People are feeling more positive about what can happen. And even like a real deep cynic like me, even a deep cynic like me can get like, can start to see like, oh, okay, yeah, there is positive outcomes here. We can actually, I'm just very worried that we're all just going to go back to work for capitalists and it'll be completely fucking fine. And they're all just like, oh, okay, I guess more capitalism. Yeah, and it's because like we've done studies on what happens to people who get wealth, right? And we know that the wealthier you get, the more disconnected you get from empathy and compassion, right? And you're far more likely to believe that you are the one, that you're the reason why you're rich, right? If you actually have wealth, even if it's like observably false, like even if it's like completely the case that the game was rigged in your favor from the outset, you will start to do this kind of stuff. And if you are attempting to, like, if this becomes your life, if the accumulation of money becomes your life, then you start to kind of wonder why it isn't actually fulfilling you. And you start to actually think like, oh, I just need more. I just need more. That'll fill the empty void inside of me. That the emptiness I feel inside of me has to be filled eventually, right? So it's just got to be filled with more. Putting advertisements in our dreams, they seem to just be pushing to see what they can get away with. Well, and also, like, they want to be the winner, right? That to them it is a game. It is a game, right? And they want to win the game. And they feel that, like, oh, if I just win the game, then it'll be fulfilling, right? Then I'll feel this deep existential emptiness that exists inside of me will be filled finally, right? It'll happen when I win, right? And clearly that's got to be the case. And they'll end their lives and they'll be on their deathbed, and when they, start to fade into that white light, and then the white light will reveal to be red, and they'll end up in hell, and they'll be like, oh, I guess I was wrong. Yeah. Israeli citizens chant death to Arabs, vandalize Palestinian shops. Police beat 27 of them, hospitalizing 2. Later, they bombed Gaza in claims of self-defense. Yeah, it's just getting to be fucking... Well, and like, I just don't see... What's the out for Israel? Like, what is the out for Israel? Because, like, the truth of the matter is this situation exists because it's being propped up by the United States. But if the United States suddenly collapses... Like, if they go through, like, the Soviet Union moment where they, like, collapse as a federated body and they can no longer sustain themselves, and they can't sustain the funding for Israel, and they can't sustain all the fuckery that they're doing in this region, that's bad fucking news for Israel, man. Like, that's bad, especially if they're standing out there being like, death to Arabs. Well, you mean like the people who live in Jordan? You mean like the people who live in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon? Death to Arabs, eh? What do you fucking think's gonna happen? Like, what do you think's going to happen? Yeah. Well, when back in the 80s, there was like a big attack from the Muslim Brotherhood that happened on Israel, and Israel would have been wiped out then and there if it hadn't have been from the support that they got from the United States, right? And like, really think about what this means, guys. Like, if these forces, if the Muslim Brotherhood is able to create enough energy and actually get into Israel and actually depose it, that means that you have, like, a Muslim Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood, will have access to nukes. Like, is that better? Like... It's very difficult for me to see a path for Israel that doesn't lead to their destruction. And it's like, go read the Torah. Go read the Torah. You'll see this story unfold over and over and over again for the Jews. It's the same story. Like, literally, there are prophets in the Bible who are just like, you are destroying yourself. And then it happens. Speaking of songs, an old classic Star Trek and songs GNDN by Admiral Radley is a love song to the old Star Trek episodes. Oh, really? I'll look that up. I love Star Trek, man. I'll watch Star Trek all day long. I'm not due for a rewatch of Star Trek Next Generation. I feel like I remember them too clearly still, but it'll happen again, and it'll be a real treat. Be a real joy. I love those episodes. AAA agents vote to form union. An important union win in financial services sector. Good. Good. More unionization, please. Annual inflation rate up 3.6. Like, 3.6 is a lot of inflation. Like, that's a lot of inflation. That's actually way, way, way bigger. And it's just because we're like printing money and giving it to rich people and having them jam it into offshore accounts. Like, yeah. The government of the United States of America has made a donation of COVID-19 vaccines to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. The donation includes 80 vials of Pfizer vaccines. The United States is committed to assisting the government of Trinidad and Tobago with its vaccination efforts. We believe that every vaccine counts. That is more like the amount of donating to a nursing home, not a whole country. This guy's hilarious. Chen Wei Hao, he's like literally just like shitting on the US every chance he has. I asked Hunter for a good movie to watch while I'm visiting the Queen Elizabeth. He recommended a foreign film called Ein Mann, ein Glas. Sounds fancy. Oh, One Man, One Glass. Gotcha. Biden, no! Biden prohibits U.S. investment in 59 Chinese companies allegedly tied to military. I mean, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't want a foreign nation to have investments in my military, right? Like, I think the military should only have allegiance to the people they're supposed to defend. I think that's reasonable. If you know a Republican, you know a fascist. If you know a Democrat, you know a capitalist imperialist that loves bombing brown people and telling them not to come to America. It's true. It's definitely true. The fact that Biden's brain is melting in real time should really be a red flag and raise the question to everyone who's paying attention. Who is actually running the elected government of the United States of America? I mean, like, Biden has handlers. Like, he has like a squad. Like, he's not like the guy making decisions or having to make decisions or anything, right? Psychedelic stocks are soaring. Oh, there you go. Yeah, bad choices with devastating consequences. NDP calls out Doug Ford for COVID-19 response. I do like the phrase. I gotta say that. Bad choices with devastating consequences is a good phrase. It's a bit long for a slogan. It's not very catchy. Like, bad choices with bad outcomes would be better, right? Bad choices with bad outcomes. Restating words within a slogan ensures its catchiness. Devastating consequences. Like, if a word gets too long, then it can be broken into two words. And devastating consequences, like, that's almost 4 words, right? So, bad choices with devastating consequences. Your slogan is too long. Bad choices with bad outcomes. Because you're saying the word bad twice, so everything's bad, right? And that's how I would tighten that up. If you genuinely wanted to turn this into a slogan, if you genuinely wanted this to be something that the populace will remember and restate and attach to Doug Ford, you want that to read bad choices with bad outcomes. Yeah. Yeah. Dear NDP. Dear NDP. I like the slogan as a first draft, but you need to change it. Bad choices, bad consequences. Yeah. I completely agree. Like, the NDP suck at sloganeering. They suck at sloganeering. Like, Doug Ford and the Conservatives were way better at sloganeering. Like, for the people, doesn't, like, that's clean. That's clean. That's sloganeering. That's good sloganeering, right? For the people. Boom. We're done. And it doesn't matter if it's reductive, and it doesn't matter if it's stupid, and it doesn't matter if it's speaking to the lowest common denominator, because you want those voters. You want the lowest common denominator to vote for you. And nobody nobody ever criticizes a slogan for being too stupid, right? Like, everybody will critique a slogan because it's not catchy. That's what they say, not catchy, right? And it's always because it's getting in you're getting in your own way. You're trying to be too fancy with it, right? And Andrea, like, she's smart, right? She's smart. She is smart. Like, but she's too smart for her own good, right? She really needs somebody around her to be like, no, you're talking to dummies, man. Like, you're talking to dummies. You gotta make it dumber. You gotta make it dumber. Bad choices with bad outcomes. I don't even like bad consequences. I think consequences is too big a word. It's too long, right? Like, bad choices with bad outcomes. Like, done. Coming to grips with these US CIA activities in broad numbers is very difficult, but adding them up, we come with a figure of 6 million people killed, and this is a minimum figure. Included are 1 million killed in the Korean War, 2 million killed in the Vietnam War, 800,000 killed in Indonesia, 1 million killed in Cambodia, in Angola, and Nicaragua. John Stockwell, former CIA officer. As if there is such a thing as a former CIA. The AFD is using Deutschland aber normal, Germany but normal. I love that. I love that. I don't know anything about the AFD. But, like, Germany but normal. I like it. It's like making a claim to nationalism, like, we're here for Germany, but also being aware of, like, the history of Germany and, like, affirming it in a very clear kind of way that isn't meant, I think, to be tongue-in-cheek, but kind of does have that kind of quality about it. So it's like Germany, but normal. Like, just like, whoa. How do you attract blue-collar workers to the NDP? Many blue-collar workers agree with the NDP economic policy, but many workers have socially conservative views. You know what blue-collar workers really appreciate more than anything is a straight talker. That's what Ford did. Like, that's what Ford did. Like, they like straight talk. They don't want somebody to be talking down on them. They never want to hear it's complicated. They never want to hear, like, kind of excuse making or anything like that. They really do want it to be like, they really do want it to be reduced to being like, look, here's your options, okay? You can either give all your money to billionaires and they'll offshore it and that's the end of that story. Or you give money to poor people and they spend it on food and shelter for themselves and we take care of them. Which one of those two do you want? Right? And when you frame questions like that to them and make, like, it obvious which one any human being with a rational soul would actually choose, they respond. And just don't even talk to them about social conservatism. Just don't even talk, because that's a losing game for the NDP, right? It's a losing game to engage them in those issues because we know what their position is and they're not going to change their mind. And all you do by engaging them on those issues is alienate them. That's it. And so if you want to alienate those people, yeah, talk to them about their socially conservative views. Don't, right? It's a class war. Keep it on class issues, and you can win on those subjects. I'm offended Ilhan Omar is equating America and the Taliban. Has the Taliban killed 6 million people? You're on it today, bud. Whatever you're doing today, bud, you're on it. You're really making me laugh, bud. I really appreciate that. I am offended that Omar is equating America and the Taliban. Has the Taliban killed 6 million people? Yeah, and at least the Taliban is fighting for its own people, right? I've had too much tea. 8-hour workday is holdover of old ways. Research suggests 5 hours is the office time sweet spot. Yeah, we've known this for years. We've known this for years and years and years. It's not going to happen, right? Because the assumption of the researcher is that it's about productivity, right? It's about increasing productivity. So if you want to increase productivity, this is how you would do it. And oh, look, 5 hours. That's the sweet spot right there. Perfect. But it's not about productivity if you're a capitalist, right? It's about exhausting people. Like Amazon recently just had its... Amazon burns through workers so quickly that executives are worried, right? So this is an article that comes out of Yahoo News. They've got the link to it in the New York Times investigation. And Amazon is burning through workers so quickly that they are worried that they will not actually have workers in the area any longer. So this is like a mask-off admission from Amazon that their strategy is to burn out workers. And so when I look at something like this, it says, no, 5 hours is the sweet time. No, but the strategy is to burn workers out, right? Because if workers are exhausted, they can't organize, right? If workers are exhausted, they can't actually do anything to help themselves. They can't form successful unions. They can't form successful political organization. They can't do any of that kind of stuff because they're exhausted. That's the strategy, right? It's not to try to increase productivity or any of that kind of stuff. There's 100 things that we could do if it was about increasing productivity, but it's not. It's about maintaining control. And if this study was about how do we maintain control, well, they would be like, oh yeah, you need to exhaust your workers. No Russian news organization was allowed to ask questions at Biden's press conference, but Putin let CNN ask multiple questions. Isn't that about freedom of the press? Biden sounding Reagan-esque. That's a compliment. It's true, they both have dementia. Yeah. USA unable to get any base in the region after Afghanistan withdrawal. CIA chief even denied a meeting in Pakistan. Like, the U.S. is a dwindling power. Like it's going to get like more and more embarrassing for these guys. Like as they begin their retreat from Afghanistan and as they attempt to privatize this war, right? That's what they're doing. They're pulling back official United States military, but they're keeping mercenary groups in the region. But the problem with mercenary groups is they have no allegiance. And so if Pakistan buys mercenary groups, right? Like it's really likely that like these mercenary groups they leave behind will just get picked up by India, Pakistan, Iran, right? China to a degree. Like, and America will eventually just lose control of this region completely because they won't be able to actually compete with the regional pressures, right? I thought people worked at Amazon for 10 plus hours, not 8. Yeah, exactly. No, you're right on that. For the CIA, Stalin was not a dictator. I've seen something like this before. In the common vulgates we used to hearing about he's a ruthless dictator. Yeah, like the CIA didn't view Stalin as a dictator because he wasn't. Stalin had the support of his people. My favorite thing to say about Stalin was that he tried to resign on 4 separate occasions. Like, think about this. What kind of dictator attempts to resign 4 times and his own people are like, no, Stalin, don't resign. I know things are difficult for you, Stalin. Don't resign. No, you're good. We like you, Stalin. You stay. Right? Like, real dictatorship. Real dictatorship. The last one was the funniest because Lenin in his old age was, he also succumbed to dementia or something like that. And he wrote this document that was very critical of Stalin, but it was critical of Stalin in that kind of like, I have dementia sort of way, right? Like, so it kind of had a childishness about it. And so this document gets read in public in one instance, and Stalin attempted to resign over it. And his people were like, no, Stalin, don't resign, because this document came out. Yeah, I've noticed. Well, that's just it. America always needs an enemy. Capitalism always needs an enemy. It always needs an enemy because if capitalism and because if capitalism doesn't have an enemy, then the people begin to realize that capitalism is the enemy. And so it's always got to like judo deflect onto somebody else, right? Oh, the problem isn't capitalism. We're not the problem. It's minority groups. It's Russia. It's China, right? Like it's always got to have a boogeyman. And as that becomes less and less credible, and as it becomes less and less likely that people buy into that, then it's going to eat itself. When your leader bullies 1/3 MPs out of the party, can't win a seat or answer a question, demands a 6-figure salary, and triggers a no-confidence vote all before a single major election, guess I'll die. Oh, yeah. Bit on the nose, but yeah, pretty accurate, Canada Left. Pretty accurate. It's the Proud Boys is a new strain of it. Yeah, well, and capitalism will always turn to fascism when it's threatened, right? If the choice for the capitalist class is to benefit the entire populace and cease to exist, or turn into fascism and destroy everyone with thugs, yeah, it'll for sure do that. It's done it over and over again. We've seen it. Like, the capitalists will go to and have world wars over it. They'll drop nuclear bombs over it. Like, that's capitalism, baby. We need more politicians like Mackenzie Scott who just have away $2.8 billion of Jeff Bezos' money to a non-profit organization for helping the poor and less fortunate. Oh yeah. What I mean is that the Democrats are pointing to more overt fascists as the other. Oh yeah. Instead, like, well, and of course, like, the Democrats are going to do that, right? Like, that's just good politics, right? That's like how the Liberals made the Proud Boys a terrorist organization here in Canada. It's like, yeah, but like, Liberals are like they're part of it, right? That Liberals ultimately do pay fealty to fascists, right? It is nice that they actually did call the Proud Boys a terrorist organization, but that just meant that they disbanded and created a new organization. Anytime I see Proud Boys, I assume half of them are feds spying on the other half. Well, but like $2.8 billion of Jeff Bezos' money, the guy has $150 billion. Like, that's like less than 2%. Like, and this guy shouldn't exist. Like, why is there a billionaire? Why is there a billionaire at all? 100 years after the end of alcohol prohibition, advocates push for drug decriminalization. Yep. Drug decriminalization is the only humane way to move forward. And it is no longer theory that there are nations that had severe drug issues, like literally like heroin addicts in public parks, like overdosing, like nightmare scenario shit, and they just decriminalized it all, and the problem went away. Why did the problem go away? Because if you are being inflicted with this drug addiction that you've got, and you know you need help, right? Like, if you've got this kind of drug addiction, you know you fucking need help. Like, you're not fooling yourself. You're aware. But if seeking help means that you have to go in front of a judge and maybe do jail time, you're not going to do that, right? So you're just going to wallow. So decriminalize it, and these people who know they need help, like, they know it's obvious to them. They're not walking around doing heroin being like, yeah, life is great. Like, fuck, that's not how it is. And so you decriminalize it, and then suddenly these people go and find help. Big fucking surprise. And we just can't get our act together, man. We just can't get our shit together on this one. And the reason we can't get our shit together on this one is pretty clear to me. So you have conservatives who are delusional, like ideologues, who think that if you're doing any kind of drug at all, that you're some kind of sycophantic devil worshiper or something like this, while they drink a whole thing of whiskey, right? Like, it's fine. So you have these losers. And then right beside them, you have liberals who are actually kind of soft on this sort of stuff and would be like, oh, yeah, okay, they want to follow the evidence and all this. But they're trying to get these guys to vote for them, right? Liberals are always trying to get conservatives to vote for them. So if they push this kind of legislation through, well, these guys won't vote for them because these guys are like sycophantic, sociopathic ideologues. And all it'll do is it'll probably attract Like, you could make the argument, well, wouldn't it attract NDPers to vote for them? But no, it doesn't actually have that effect. In fact, it actually makes liberals defect to NDP. Because they're like, oh, we're no longer attempting to woo these guys? Oh, well, then let's move to the left. And that's why the liberals don't want to move to the left on any issue. Because if they move to the left, then people start to defect to the NDP. Because they're like, well, if we're moving left anyway, right? And this is why ultimately the liberals pay fealty to fascists. And once fascism takes over, liberals, instead of joining the rest of us and fighting against them, just bend the knee. When corporations can make more profit selling drugs than they make from criminalizing them, then they'll be legalized. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's a good point, actually, Onward, that, like, why would we want people to get off of these drugs, right? We're the ones selling them. We don't want people to get clean. We want them to go deeper. COVID-free for the first time since March 26th. 2020. Wow. This is the first time in the MSICU at Toronto General does not have any COVID patients. Oh, wow. That is actually big news. That's actually big news. And those people deserve it. I'm expecting to see a mass exodus from the healthcare industry due to the abandonment that the Ford administration has put at their doorstep. And I'm expecting to see a lot of those people start to get politically active. And my general opinion of that is, if we start to see nurses and doctors get politically active, we should vote for them. Like, nobody deserves it more than these guys. Like, they should take over. Let's let the doctors and the nurses take over the society for a little while. I'm fine with that. Yeah. If U.S. land were divided like U.S. wealth, 1% would own this, 9% would own this, 30% would own this, 20% would own this, and 40% would own this red dot. I love maps. I love maps. Maps are so great. Indigenous Canadians win right to use original names after forced assimilation. Is that something that they had to actually get? Like, couldn't you just change your name? Yeah. There's probably something really dark and weird about this. I'm actually going to dig a little deeper. Because, like, why do they need to win that? Yeah. We're forced to use European names on official documents. Can now apply to restore. So they weren't allowed to do that? Like, that's fucking gross. There's no systemic racism in Canada. There's no systemic racism in Canada. Your name is Patrick. There's no systemic racism in Canada. Holy fuck. Your name is Patrick. The government says that your name is Patrick. No, you can't change your name back. There is no systemic racism in Canada. Like, fuck. Socialism is when CIA funded on the internet named wrong socialism determined what should or should be socialism over people living in actually socialist countries. Oh yeah. Socialism is when picture of Ho Chi Minh. Bootlickers. Communism is dying in Vietnam. Vietnam now love capitalism. The truth. Every single football match that has Vietnam team is like this. We always sing a Vietnamese song named It's Like Having Uncle Ho in Our Victory Day, too. Like, one of the things that I think is so funny, what's starting to happen in more communist countries like Vietnam, Cambodia, right? They're just starting to completely dismiss Western critiques. They're literally just like, you have nothing important to say to us. Well, especially a place like Vietnam, which was like completely fucking leveled by Western imperialists. Yeah, a humble suggestion for Texans: stop electing politicians who want to kill you. Yep. Waking up at 8 a.m. tomorrow for vaccine booking. Waking up at 9 a.m. tomorrow for Wonderland booking. Yeah. The U.S. and its massive web of NGOs like HRW or the NED don't get to lecture anyone about human rights abuses. Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that I've really noticed about like the National Endowment for Democracy and like Human Rights Watch, and the CIA generally is like, people do not quite understand exactly how huge these organizations are, right? Like, in regards to the Uyghur genocide thing, like, I can tell that there's people who just, like, they don't want to believe that, like, this whole thing is a CIA fabrication. And it's because they don't quite understand, like, if you give an organization, like, hundreds of billions of dollars, they can create this whole network of international spies. Like, $1 billion is a lot of fucking money, man. Like, you can do a lot with $1 billion. And what you're seeing now is, instead of like these corporations and these wealthy billionaires who just offshore it and just sit on the money, well, the CIA uses that money, right? And if you've got that kind of wealth that you can just spend to erect these institutions, well, you can be very influential. And like, but people don't really understand it or believe it. Anyway. Liberalism is becoming illiberal to defend itself from illiberalism. What? Not to mention the bodies of power that have kept liberalism in place over the last 300 years themselves have been extremely illiberal, whether it was the British Navy and now the US Navy, military. Yeah, this is what I was saying before, right? That liberals will ultimately pay fealty to fascists. Like, that's exactly what happened to Hitler. That's exactly what happened to Mussolini, right? That's exactly what happened to the Japanese. That any kind of liberals that exist within the society will ultimately pay fealty to the fascists so that they can benefit and maintain the system of capital. Like, because they're, you know, naturally cowards, which is why they're the ones that concede power, right? If any of you pro-lifers get tapeworms, you better suck it up and be a good host, because tapeworms have a heartbeat and feel pain. It deserves a choice, and it chooses you to be its mother. That's a really fucked up take, but I like it. Justin Trudeau positioning himself as dean of the G7 is laughable. There's no way that he did that. What did he... Apparently he fancies himself the dean. The G7 summit that just happened was a joke. It was just a bunch of old, demented white people getting into a room together and saying, China's a real problem, right? China's a real problem, right? We should probably do something with China. And then they don't have any solutions. Like, they don't know what to do about China. Because they don't understand, like, oh, if you abandon your populace, it weakens you. Like, they literally have fallen into this neoliberal grift of believing that, well, we've got the wealthiest corporations, so we should be the most powerful. But that's not where your power is coming from. Your power comes from the stability of your populace, right? And if you've made on purpose, you've made your populace unstable so that you can enrich a bunch of corporations, well, then guess what? You're extremely weak. And the United States is extremely weak. And it's going to get really obvious. Like, they're not going to have an economy. Like, nobody's got any money. Enemy Paul is on her way out as Green Leader. She knows it. Now she's being vocal for the first time ever and lashing out at everyone for her shortcomings. Well, and like, not only being vocal about it, but really falling back on the, like, racism and sexism angle, which is like that reminds me of when Elizabeth Warren, right? Elizabeth Warren went after Bernie on these gender and identity issues, and then immediately was shown the door, right? It really smacks of desperation. It really smacks of, like, you don't have anything left to say, right? And it's just like this last ditch effort to consolidate power, and like, Enemy Paul ultimately is just not the leader. She's just not the leader for the moment, right? She's just not the leader for the moment. Like, maybe 5-10 years ago, sure, but like, the Green Party needs to be socialist. Like, that's the only way it justifies its existence. Its existence. Otherwise, it's just green liberalism, and who gives a shit about that? Harry Potter may have a theme park in Florida, but now SpongeBob SquarePants will have a restaurant in Palestine. Really? That's weird. I think that's weird. Anybody else think this is weird? That they're like literally putting like this is the Krusty Krab. They've even got the Mr. Krabs standing there. This is weird. This feels weird. What's the story? Hold on. Maybe, sometimes comments have information. SpongeBob, me boy, we must dismantle the illegitimate apartheid state of Israel. Like this is odd, man. I guess SpongeBob SquarePants, man. It goes across all. Yeah, it goes across all nations. Warren did all of that to Bernie, and she doesn't get to be VP, doesn't get anything from Grandpa Joe. I love it. Yeah, I feel like Warren. That was the moment that I think she really shot herself in the foot. That if she had gone out gracefully, if she had gone out without taking that swing, I think it would have been better for her. But that's what power will do to you. Look at that beautiful picture. Look at that picture. That's a beaut. That's a beaut. That's a beaut, bud. Let's just pause and take a moment and look at that picture, man. I love it. And how the rainbow just like comes right across, and the nice cloudy sky up there. And there's something really like serene and what's the word I'm looking? Rustic, I suppose. Like you'd think it would have like kind of an ominousness about it, but it truly doesn't. Like there's something really like calming about this. I like it. This moment of Zen brought to you by CMS Molinars. How's that for a name? Grocery giants discussed fixing more than bread prices, court files suggest. What? You mean sociopaths are attempting to steal money from us? Oh, what? Like, big fucking surprise. I'm gonna take a look at that later. Happy birthday to Comrade Shakur. Nobody should be hitting lotto for 36 million, and we got people starving in the streets. There's no way these people should own planes, and there are people who don't have houses. Shacks, drawers, pants. Yeah. There's a reason they needed to get that guy, man. There's a reason he needed to get that guy. He was starting to affect white kids, right? Tupac Shakur was being played by white kids, so they had to get him. Yeah, Canada needs a national public transportation system. Here's why. No fucking mystery. It's when corporate capitalists abandon us, we need to actually have a system, right? Like, the idea that you're gonna only run this system on a for-profit basis while there are worthless parasites at the top of it, siphoning money away, like it's not gonna work, and it hasn't worked, right? That's why Grey Goose shut down, right? Like we need a nationalized we need a nationalized everything system. Get rid of these parasites. Like they're not worthwhile. They don't actually provide anything for us. Canada ranked number one in country in the world for filthiest money. Something we can be proud of. Filthy money. Wash your hands, Canada. Lincoln Project still pumping out banger insults. The current and former president of the United States meet in Geneva, Switzerland. Oh yeah, okay. Ha ha ha. Like imagine believing that you have a powerful country, but also that Russia can decide your election results. Like really, like think about how stupid that sounds on the face of it. That America is the most powerful nation in the world with the greatest democracy in the world, but the Russians decided who the president was. What the? You have to be insane. Like that is like some delusional mega level shit right there. Like, and that's the Democrats actually believe this. They actually believe this, that the Republicans worked with Russia in order to steal the election away from Hillary Clinton. Like, that's just blue anon, man. Like, that's just crazy shit. Like, that's nuts. And yet, here we go, Lincoln Project. I think they are being a bit tongue in cheek here, but still, it's just nuts. The proletariat will use its political supremacy to wrest by all degree, all capital from the bourgeoisie, to centralize all instruments of production in the hands of the state, i.e. of the proletariat organized as the ruling class, and to increase the total productive forces as rapidly as possible. Good old Santa Marks. I don't understand why everyone was so salty about student loan forgiveness. Big banks, bail them out. Auto industry, bail them out. Farmers, bail them out. Your next door neighbor has $250,000 in student loans. Fuck them. They should have budgeted better. Yeah. Like, it's just so asinine. I hope you guys are doing well out there. I feel like we've all run out of steam at the end of this one. We're 15 minutes away from the end of the episode. Hope you guys are all doing really great. Oh, Chinese astronauts? Yeah, we got no audio here. Yeah, alright. Oh, here we go. Angus Reid polling June 9th. So, my traditional riff has been like, 37% is way too high. Like, that's a disgracefully high number. But these polls being like this before the election, a year out from the election, is enormously bad news for the Conservatives. That's really, really bad news for the Conservatives, man. Like, they've got a lot of ground to make up, and the NDP can make up that ground pretty easily. 250,000, they won't even forgive 10K, yeah. Well, and it's despicable what's that, like, I know in Canada you can bankrupt out of your student loans, right? So it's not a death sentence. But, like, in the United States, get fucked. Like, you can't bankrupt out of that. Like, nothing tells you that the system is more illegitimate than that you can't bankrupt out of student loans. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's disgraceful. That's disgraceful. Yeah, and the fact that the Liberal Party, like, I mean, it has 22%. I think that's just liberals voting liberals because they're going to vote liberal, right? Like, I feel like Wynne probably got 22% of the vote on her way out. So I think that number is probably going to stay the same. It's these numbers here, and we'll see. Del Duca could run a really good campaign, and as we talked about before, Horvath can run a really bad campaign. So, it's almost like union busting was a bad idea. Who would have guessed? Economists are starting to suspect that unions were a better deal than textbooks made them out to be. What? It's almost as if, bear with me for a second, people with power and money conspired to create an economic situation that enabled them to keep more of their power and money at the expense of the workers who made their success possible. Yeah. Canada's inflation rate rises to highest level in a decade at 3.6. I can't stress this enough, guys. 3.6 inflation is an enormous amount. That's a high level. That's like currency collapsing levels of inflation. And what that means is it means that your dollar is worth less year over year. So while wages have stagnated, it means your wages buy less, right? So, like, the idea that inflation is set at this rate, it's a disaster. It's a disaster. I was lucky and got a state scholarship. Good for you, bud. And graduated with zero debt, but my younger sister got the same scholarship after the GOP had made it a shadow of its former self. She graduated with a lot of debt. And it's just completely illegitimate. Like, we can educate people for 12 years without any debt, but once we try to focus their studies, suddenly it requires a whole ton of debt. No, it's obviously a scam. It's obviously a grift. And the people who are standing against student loan forgiveness, I think they have something wrong with their mind. I think they're either evil or just, like, literally have a mental illness that they're struggling with. Yeah, clearly the Liberals' current approach to housing is failing Canadians. How do we know that's true? There's 10 cities. Elizabeth May, Anime Paul, fucking socialists. Yeah. Basically. My Confederate flag isn't about hate, it's about honoring my Southern heritage. Nope, it's a hate symbol, hun. I honor my German heritage by eating sauerkraut and potato salad, not flying a swastika from the back of a butt-ugly pickup. Go eat some cornbread and shut up. My favorite thing that people say about the Confederate flag is like, the Confederates were only in power for like 4 years, right? Like, Obama was president longer than the Confederate flag. Like, what are you talking about, your heritage? You just want to be a fucking racist, that's all. The result of neocolonialism is that our foreign capital is used for the exploitation rather than for the development of the less developed parts of the world. The struggle against neocolonialism is not aimed at excluding the capital of the developed world from operating in less developed countries. It is aimed at preventing the financial power of the developed countries being used in such a way as to impoverish the less developed. Yeah, nailing it. Oh yeah, see you later, Onward. Thanks for being here. We're closing down in about 10 minutes here anyhow. Glad you were here, bud. You made me laugh a lot today. Oh yeah, this is this Michael Parenti clip that I was talking about yesterday.
To poor countries to make money. The third world is not poor. You don't go to poor countries to make money. There are very few poor countries in this world. Most countries are rich. The Philippines are rich. Brazil is rich. Mexico is rich. Chile is rich. Only the people are poor. But there's billions to be made there, to be carved out and to be taken. There's been billions for 400 years. The capitalist European and North American powers have carved out and taken the timber, the flax, the hemp, the cocoa, the rum, the tin, the copper, the iron, the rubber, the bauxite, the slaves, and the cheap labor. They have taken out of these countries. These countries are not underdeveloped, they're overexploited. The third...
Yeah, that nails it. That nails it right there. Ah, Parenti. I wish that he was able to be more active today, but he's I think he may have died recently, actually, if I'm not mistaken, but in either case, he's no longer able to be active. It's gonna be like when Noam Chomsky goes, finally. Like, Noam Chomsky is staying fairly active in his old age, but, like, you can see he's on his way out, right? But Noam Chomsky's on his way out. And that'll be a big loss. That'll be a big loss. The haircut that all Blizzard eats. Oh, yeah. Left Turn Canada podcast. Check it out. Support. Justin Trudeau loves vaccine patents more than people. Yeah. Damn boxes. I done. I don't believe he passed away. He's just not active anymore, like you said. Yeah. Rob Rizzo tried to interview him, but his son says he's not capable of doing anything. Yeah, that's what I thought. He's. I mean, you know, we get old. We get old. It's really that simple. And Parenti, like, Parenti is one of those guys who, like, if it hadn't been for, like, YouTube, basically, like, if it hadn't been for YouTube, would have just kind of faded away. You know, he would have just faded away, and his life's work would have been kind of forgotten, and nobody would have paid any attention to him or known about him. And then, because of the internet and because of YouTube, there's like a handful of speeches that he gave that have resurfaced and have recirculated on YouTube. I highly advise everybody go take a look at Michael Parenti. I mean, I could be convinced to show one of his lectures here. He also did really good work about Julius Caesar. Funnily enough, like he has a very convincing argument that the reason why Julius Caesar was assassinated was because he was fighting against the oligarchs of that day. That he passed a lot of legislation. Like, Julius Caesar laid the groundwork to transition the society from slavery to serfdom. right? That he created a lot of places where the slaves could actually work and live on the land and not be owned directly. That an oligarch would still own the land, just like in serfdom, right? Rob currently getting abuse on Twitter for this statement. When you realize that anti-communist is just a code word for fascist, a lot of previously confusing stuff about the last few decades becomes very clear. I mean, yeah. Like, I don't really get, like, why would you be anti-communist? Like, I think that it makes sense to, like, if I met somebody and they were like, I don't really agree with communism, and I'm upset with the communists because of X or any of that kind of stuff, like, that's fine. But, like, being anti-communist, why? Like, why? And ultimately you realize it's because, well, if you're a fascist, of course you're going to be anti-communist, right? Like, communism is the antidote to fascism, so... Liberal MPs help to defeat NDP's dental care motion, right? Like, liberals aren't here to help you. They're not here to help you. Workers aren't poor because they don't know how to save money or cook a meal cheaply. They're poor because a minority of capitalists own the means of production, exploit their labor, and pay them as little as possible. Workers are poor because capitalists are rich. Bingo. 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 The feeling when you lift 70 million people out of poverty. Oh, oh. Chants from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free has gotten more negative press in the U.S. than thousands of Israelis chanting death to Arabs, again and again and again. One chant is calling for liberation and freedom, the other is calling for genocide. Palestiners smear for wanting to live as humans, while Israeli calls for mass murder are mostly ignored. Well, I think that we will be drawing this one to a close. Oh my god. Toronto condo prices have risen by 44% since 2017's housing peak. Systems coming down. Systems coming down. Systems coming down. Capitalism doesn't work. If you think sex workers sell their bodies but coal miners do not, your view of labor is clouded by your moralistic view of sexuality. Bingo bango. Bingo bango. Well, I think on that note, guys, I'm going to close this one out. Thanks for being here, as always. You are a divine being, standing in divine energy. I hope this depression lifts soon. I'm going to get myself some ice cream. All right, guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good luck. We're going to need it.